Chapter 1135. Even Plan for the Future. Chapter 1135. Even Plan for the Future. Gu Yundong and Gu Xiaoxi's channel was not in a straight line at all. In the end, Gu Yundong said, I think we should ask Xianxia about this. We should indeed. I'll go ask her now. Gu Yundong exhaled and frowned. She thought that there must be other ways to help Xianxia. She had to think again. Xiao Qingyuan laughed. You don't have to think too much. This is between the two of them. Your uncle is not as young as Yunshu and the others. He has experienced so much and knows what he wants. Gu Yundong was stunned. She rubbed her head. I've reached a dead end. Forget it. Let's wait for them to discuss it first. Today is a good day. Let's make some delicious food to celebrate. Okay. The two of them went straight to the kitchen and happily made 5 or 6 dishes. When he returned to the central room, he realized that Gu Xiaoxi and Xianxia had walked out of the room. In just a short while, Gu Yundong felt that the atmosphere between the two of them seemed to be different. Huh? Gu Xiaoxi met Gu Yundong's gaze in embarrassment and said, Yaya has already agreed. I have 50 taels of silver now. It's enough for me to get married. The last time she brought Hong Xiaoni all the way to Great Rock Village, she was really penniless. The house in front of her was built after borrowing some money from Zhou Jinggu. Gu Yundong, €1. All right, as long as you're happy. She could tell that Gu Xiaoxi might have feelings for Xianxia. I also saved 3 taels of silver, Xianxia said softly. Gu Xiaoxi was even happier. Then we have 53 taels of silver. It doesn't cost much to live in the countryside. We can use this money for a long time if we conserve it. When we leave, we can even sell the houses here. Although we might not be able to sell them for much, I'll work hard. Our life won't be bad. Xianxia lowered her head and said, I will work hard too. Then, she frowned slightly. It's just that my house can't be sold. When I get married, the clan will take that house back. It's all right. We have enough money. Gu Xiaoxi was really happy. In the past, he was the only one working at home, and Hong Xiaoni wouldn't do anything. Now that he heard Xianxia say that she wanted to work hard with him and make their lives better, he felt warm in his heart. Gu Yundong, €1, Xiao Qingyuan, €1. That was good. The future days had already been planned. However, Gu Yundong looked at Gu Xiaoxi, who was filled with anticipation for the future, and finally could not help but laugh. She called out to the two of them, All right, you can talk about these things behind closed doors. Let's eat first. Gu Xiaoxi and Xianxia blushed. Gu Xiaoxi was a little vexed. He shouldn't have told Yundong this. She was a junior and had yet to get married. However, he only had Yundong as his only relative in front of him. In addition, she had been too independent these few days and was not much different from him. He could not help but talk to her about everything. The 4 of them sat down to eat. This time, they quietened down, especially Gu Xiaoxi and Xianxia. They lowered their heads and continued eating. Gu Yundong found it funny. When they were done eating, Gu Yundong handed a brush and paper to Gu Xiaoxi. But there's one more thing that needs to be resolved first. Chapter 1136. Writing a Divorce Letter. Chapter 1136. Writing a divorce letter. Gu Xiaoxi was stunned. He looked up at her in confusion. What is it? Gu Yundong rolled her eyes. You're going to get another wife. Shouldn't you settle the first one first? The first one? Wasn't Hong Xiaoni taken care of? Why €1? Gu Xiaoxi suddenly reacted. You mean a divorce letter? What else could it be? Gu Xiaoxi smiled sheepishly and quickly took the brush and paper. This time, it wasn't a charcoal pen. It was a brush that Gu Yundong had borrowed from Patriarch Chong. After all, it was a divorce letter. It had to be more formal. Gu Xiaoxi was literate. After all, he had grown up following Gu Dajiang. He could write basic words. It was just that in the past, he did not have the conditions to practice calligraphy in the Gu family, so the handwriting was a little ugly. It was like a dog crawling, and it really hurt his eyes. However, when Xianxia saw it, her face was filled with surprise. I didn't expect you to know so many words. Gu Xiaoxi instantly felt embarrassed. It's €1. It's all right. After a pause, he added, if you want to learn, I'll teach you in the future. I can learn too? Sure. My brother said that women should learn to read so that they won't be easily deceived. Xianxia's eyes seemed to glow. Of course, she wanted to be literate, but in Great Rock Village, there were not many boys who could afford to go to school, let alone girls. Facing Xianxia's adoring gaze, Gu Xiaoxi's heart inexplicably a euro beat faster. Gu Yundong rolled her eyes as she watched from the side. Youngest uncle, you should practice your handwriting first. Don't lead people astray. When the time comes, people will think that normal handwriting is like yours. After he finished writing, Gu Xiaoxi heaved a sigh of relief. He planned to hand this divorce letter to Hong Xiaoni personally. He would treat it as settling things between them. Chang Yaya was still at the Gu residence, and Gu Yundong did not go out. Therefore, Xiao Qingyuan accompanied Gu Xiaoxi to the Zhou residence. Along the way, they encountered many villagers. Some were from the Zhou family, some were from the Chang family, and some were outsiders. All of them looked at the two of them with resentment, joy, and curiosity. In the past, Gu Xiaoxi didn't have much of a presence in Great Rock Village. When he met those strong and unreasonable people from the two races, he would almost always avoid them. Now, it didn't matter anymore. He faced all kinds of gazes very calmly. When they arrived at Zhou Jingguo's house, before they could enter the house, they could vaguely hear cries and curses coming from inside. It's all your fault, you shameless thing. You caused us to be in such a sorry state. Why don't you die? Why don't you die? Why don't you take a look at yourself? Do you think that everyone wants you? Now, young Master Qiu doesn't want you anymore. Even Gu Xiaoxi doesn't like you anymore. What hope do you have in life? You don't have a father or a mother. You don't even have a husband. Do you believe that when you go out in the future, others will spit at you? If I were you, I would jump into the river. Back then, so many people died in the famine. Why didn't you? Gu Xiaoxi, who was outside the door, had a complicated look in his eyes. He sighed inwardly. Xiao Qingyuan glanced at him. Have you softened your heart? I'm not soft-hearted. I just didn't expect it to come to this. At the thought that she had set him up and almost burned him to death, his heart could not soften. It was as cold as iron. Let's go in, Xiao Qingyuan said. Gu Xiaoxi glanced at the divorce letter in her hand, nodded, and strode into the Zhou family's courtyard. Chapter 1137. I'm so miserable. Chapter 1137. I'm so miserable. Hong Xiaoni, let me tell you. This is the Zhou family. Don't stay here. You a Euro. Eldest Aunt Zhou was still scolding angrily when she saw the two of them enter. Her voice stopped abruptly. You, what are you doing here? Of course, Eldest Aunt also hated Gu Xiaoxi. If it was in the past, she would have pounced on him, bit him, and torn him apart. However, when her gaze landed on Xiao Qingyuan, all her impulses collapsed. Her husband was still locked up in the Zhou family's ancestral hall. If she still dared to do anything, her family would not have a good life. Gu Xiaoxi glanced at her and said, I'm looking for Hong Xiaoni. Why are you looking for her? Something's up. Eldest Aunt Zhou's heart was filled with hatred. After glancing at Xiao Qingyuan fearfully, she could only reluctantly point to a room beside her. She's over there. Gu Xiaoxi glanced at the room and pursed her lips. When he first came to Great Rock Village, he and Hong Xiaoni had lived in Zhou Jingguo's house for a few days, so they were naturally very familiar with the Zhou family's environment. The house that Eldest Aunt Zhou had pointed out could not even be considered a woodshed. It was a place where various farming tools were placed. It was originally built with the outhouse, but now, it was separated by a mud wall as tall as a person. Gu Xiaoxi heaved a sigh of relief and strode towards the room. Xiao Qingyuan stood in the courtyard without moving. Therefore, even if Aunt Zhou wanted to hear what they were saying in the house, she did not dare to do anything under his nose. The moment Gu Xiaoxi pushed open the door, he saw Hong Xiaoni lying on the bed. There were many baskets and hoes in the house, and only a small piece was still empty. There were 2 benches there and 2 wooden boards on them. They could be treated as a bed. Hong Xiaoni was lying on this wooden board, staring blankly at a basket hanging on the beam above her head. Upon seeing Gu Xiaoxi enter, she froze for a moment before hurriedly sitting up. However, her leg was broken, and she fell off the bed. Gu Xiaoxi instinctively ran forward to support her. However, as soon as he touched her, he immediately recalled the grudge between the two of them. She was no longer the wife who was seriously ill and needed to be taken care of. He quickly retracted his hand, but it was too late. Hong Xiaoni grabbed his arm and asked anxiously, Xiaoxi, why are you here? Are you here to take me away? Take me away. I was wrong. I've let you down. I won't do it again. I'll definitely be a good wife in the future. I'll take care of you, serve you, and give birth to your children, okay? Gu Xiaoxi wanted to stand up, but Hong Xiaoni was surprisingly strong. He couldn't break free. He quickly took out the divorce letter and handed it to her. He said, You've misunderstood. I'm here to divorce you. From now on, we have nothing to do with each other. You're on your own. Hong Xiaoni was stunned. Gu Xiaoxi took this opportunity to quickly retract his hand and immediately took 2 steps back. Hong Xiaoni couldn't read, but when she heard the word divorce, her expression suddenly became ferocious. She grabbed it and tore it into pieces. What divorce letter? No, there's no divorce letter. She raised her head and looked at Gu Xiaoxi. You won't divorce me, right? You were so good to me in the past. You couldn't bear to let me suffer at all. You listened to everything I said. But now my leg is broken. Look, I'm so miserable. Xiaoxi, you can't leave me alone. Take me away, okay? I beg you. Chapter 1138. Proposal. Chapter 1138. Proposal. Gu Xiaoxi looked at the pieces of paper on the ground and paused for a moment before saying, It's useless even if you tear this divorce letter. I'll leave another letter in the Zhou family. Hong Xiaoxi's voice stopped abruptly. She looked at him in disbelief and cried, I've already begged you like this, but you're still indifferent? Must you divorce me? Gu Xiaoxi, didn't you hear how that woman outside scolded me just now? I'll die if I stay here. Gu Xiaoxi looked at her steadily. You're the one who caused all of this. But you promised my father that you would take good care of me. My father entrusted me to you. How can you not care about me? Hong Xiaoni cried until her face was smudged. It was as if she was grabbing the last chance and urgently moving Father Hong out. Yes, as long as she mentioned her father, Gu Xiaoxi's heart would definitely soften. That was his savior. He saved my life. You took my life. It's paid off. No, you didn't pay it back. Hong Xiaoni shouted hoarsely. You're still alive and well, but my father is dead. How can this be considered paying it back? Seeing that she seemed to have gone crazy, Gu Xiaoxi shook his head slowly. If you think so, I can't do anything about it. When I die in the future, I'll apologize to your father. With that, he turned around and left without looking at Hong Xiaoni again. Hong Xiaoni panicked and hurriedly crawled forward. Don't go. Gu Xiaoxi, don't go. Don't leave me behind. I was wrong. I'll change. Don't go. Gu Xiaoxi did not turn back. From now on, he would have nothing to do with Hong Xiaoni. Hong Xiaoni's voice was so shrill that everyone outside the courtyard heard it. Xiao Qingyuan saw how straightforward he was, but he still exhaled slightly. Let's go. The two of them strode out of the Zhou family's courtyard. They could vaguely hear eldest Aunt Zhou scolding again. What are you howling for? Are you mourning? Your uncle isn't dead yet. It was no longer their business to say anything else. Xiao Qingyuan and Gu Xiaoxi returned to the Gu residence and began to discuss the matter of Xianxia. Gu Xiaoxi definitely had to go to the Chong family to propose first. Currently, Xianxia did not have any relatives by her side. It was just that her current situation was a little special, so she still had to ask the Chong family head to propose marriage. Therefore, that afternoon, the 4 of them went to the county city to buy proposal presents. Their departure gave Chief Chong a huge fright. It was fine if they left, but why did they take Xianxia with them? It was not easy for things to calm down. If news of Xianxia eloping with someone spread, the Chong family's reputation would be finished. Fortunately, an elder advised him. The Gu family's house is still there. If Gu Xiaoxi wants to leave, he will definitely sell it. He probably has something on and will leave temporarily. There's no hurry. If he had something to do, why did he bring Xianxia along? This elder didn't know. However, at night, the 4 of them appeared at Chief Chang's house. Gu Xiaoxi and Xianxia had changed into brand new clothes that they had bought from the tailor shop in the county. Gu Xiaoxi had used his 50 taels of silver to buy the clothes. After all, he was going to propose. She couldn't possibly wear clothes that were filled with patches. He was still carrying a lot of things in his hand. When Chief Chang saw this, he was extremely surprised. When he saw Xianxia looking at Gu Xiaoxi shyly, he suddenly realized what was going on and was overjoyed. He hurriedly invited them in. Chapter 1139. No Banquet. Chapter 1139. No banquet. As expected, Gu Xiaoxi directly explained his intentions. I'm here today to propose marriage. I want to marry Xianxia. Patriarch Chang was overjoyed. Actually, he had thought about it before. He might as well let Gu Xiaoxi marry Xianxia. If so many people saw her lying on the same bed with him, her chastity would be gone. If Xianxia continued to stay in Great Rock Village, rumors would still force her to death in the future. He might as well let Gu Xiaoxi take responsibility. However, with Xiao Qingyuan and Gu Yundong around, he did not dare to make such a request. Therefore, he could only continue to wrong Xianxia. He did not expect them to have such intentions. Without much thought, Chief Chang hurriedly nodded and agreed. All right, all right, all right. Yaya is a hard-working girl. She's a good person. You're also someone diligent. When you two become husband and wife in the future, you'll definitely live happily ever after. He looked at the proposal present on the table again. It was not very expensive. It was similar to what the villagers in the village had prepared when they proposed. He thought that with a nephew-in-law who was a high-ranking official, this man would at least buy something good. Gu Xiaoxi didn't know what he was thinking, but he bought the present with his own money. Naturally, he bought the same things as the other villagers. Chief Chang retracted his thoughts and asked, since there's no problem with this marriage, when will this banquet occur? We won't be holding a banquet here. Before Chief Chang could finish speaking, Xianxia interrupted first. However, when he said this, not only was Chief Chang stunned, but even Gu Yundong and the others were stunned. Xianxia smiled and said, after all, something just happened in the village. If Xiaoxi and I get married at this time, the Zhou family will definitely be unhappy. There might be other rumors spreading. It's better to keep a low profile. Xiaoxi and I sign the marriage contract and we can be considered husband and wife. Chief Chang lowered his eyes. What he said made sense. They had just tricked the Zhou family. They had to know when to stop. If they added fuel to the fire, they might retaliate. Xianxia continued. Moreover, Xiaoxi has been separated from his brother and sister for so long. His family is looking forward to him going back early. Yundong and Qingyuan also have something important to do. It's not good to delay for too long. Patriarch Chang nodded. That's true. He could only sigh regretfully, but it didn't matter. He didn't think much of Xianxia. Whether she wanted to hold a wedding banquet or not was her own business. In that case, it's settled. Tomorrow morning, you guys come over and sign the marriage contract. From then on, you'll be husband and wife. Thank you, Patriarch. Things progressed very smoothly and quickly. Gu Xiaoxi originally wanted to tell Xianxia about the banquet. Unexpectedly, that night, Xianxia was left at Chief Chang's house. After all, she was a member of the Chang family. On the last night before her marriage, she could not follow them to the Gu family's house. In addition, Patriarch Chang had the intention to do Xiao Qingyuan a favor, so he asked his wife to prepare something for her. It was not much, just enough for celebration. That night, Xianxia slept with Chief Chang's wife. His wife specially told her many things that newlyweds should pay attention to. Xianxia did not have any elders by her side, so she could only do the job. His wife, on the other hand, treated Xianxia quite well. She explained in detail some of the ways of interaction between husband and wife, as well as the conflict between mother-in-law and sisters-in-law. Xianxia almost did not sleep the entire night. Chapter 1140. Preparing to go home. Chapter 1140. Preparing to go home the next morning, Chief Chang gathered a few elders and told them about this matter. No one objected. In fact, they all agreed very much. Hence, when Gu Xiaoxi and the others arrived, Chief Chang took the marriage contract and got the two of them to sign it to officially become husband and wife. The moment Gu Xiaoxi and Xianxia pressed their handprints, they inexplicably felt that they were related to each other. It was very subtle and very joyous. Even if there was no banquet, there had to be a dowry. Xianxia only had 3 taels of silver in total. However, her family had a cage that her mother had brought when she married over. It was quite beautiful, including this. Some of the clothes and blankets were really old and useless. In the end, Chief Chong discussed with a few elders. Although they had decided to take back her original house after she got married, in order to compensate her for the grievances and injustice she had suffered previously, the clan still bought it for 2 taels of silver. They even added 2 pieces of red cloth and a quilt. In this way, Xianxia's dowry was actually much better than some girls in the village. As for the betrothal gifts, they were just a formality. They would definitely not be handed over to the clansmen. In the end, they were all given to Xianxia. As such, Xianxia's own money was considered quite a lot. Even the chief's wife was envious. When she got married, her family did not give her so much money. Once the marriage contract was signed, they would officially be husband and wife. Xianxia's hair was also tied up, and she looked different. When the few of them returned to the Gu residence, Gu Yundong specially made room for the newlyweds. She pulled Xiao Qingyuan and ran away. They still had to look for the village chief to settle the household registration first. On the other hand, Gu Xiaoxi and Xianxia sat alone in the room with uncomfortable expressions. They clearly had a lot to say 2 days ago, but suddenly, it seemed like they could not say anything. Seeing that they couldn't stay silent any longer, Gu Xiaoxi swallowed his saliva and spoke first. By the way, why don't you agree to hold the banquet? If you're worried that the Zhou family will cause trouble, we can set up 2 tables and only entertain close friends. No, I just don't like it here. Xianxia said, I've lived in Great Rock Village since I was young. I don't have any friends or relatives. Even if I'm supposed to invite someone, I don't know who I should invite. If I set up a wine banquet, it feels like it's just for fun. I don't want to Gu Xiaoxi understood. Although Xianxia had clansmen, she did not feel the warmth of her clansmen. Not long ago, she was almost pulled out of the pond by these clansmen. No one pleaded for her. No one believed that she was innocent. Everyone could not wait for her to die. She was bitterly disappointed. If she held a wedding, she believed that no one would sincerely wish her well. If that was the case, there was no point in hosting a banquet. Gu Xiaoxi fell silent. He couldn't help but reach out to cover her hand and say, in the future, I'll dote on you and treat you well. Xianxia's eyes were sour. Yes, now she had a husband. Moreover, this husband looked very good. She looked up at Gu Xiaoxi and smiled again. The tears in her eyes fell without warning. Gu Xiaoxi's heart ached terribly and he reached out to wipe them away. After Gu Yundong and Xiao Qingyuan settled the matter, they began to consider whether they should return to the Gu residence. If they went back like this, would they interrupt something? Why don't we stay in the county for the night and come back tomorrow? All right, after we sell Uncle's house tomorrow, we can set off home. Chapter 1141. Inexplicable Silver. Chapter 1141. Inexplicable Silver. Gu Yundong and Xiao Qingyuan decisively went to a county inn to stay for the night. Because he had promised the county magistrate of Haiyuan County that he would go to the county office before he left, Xiao Qingyuan went to the county magistrate to fulfill his promise and thank him. Gu Yundong did not follow her. She walked around the streets by herself. It was unknown what day it was today, but the streets were still very lively at night. There was also the night market. Gu Yundong wanted to see if there were any local specialties here, so that she could bring some back to eat. Unexpectedly, just as they reached the 3rd stall, a complaining voice suddenly came from behind. How unlucky! What kind of people are the Zhou family? They actually used me. Teach them a lesson later. Don't let them think that the dignified young master of the Qiu family is so easy to bully. Young Master Qiu? Gu Yundong raised her eyebrows and turned to look at the people behind him. That person also happened to look up. When he saw Gu Yundong, his eyes lit up. He took a few steps forward and stood in front of her. He said, Miss, are you married? Gu Yundong was speechless. She should look different from Hong Xiaoni, right? Or was there a sequelae from being hurt by Hong Xiaoni, so her aesthetic standards had changed? On the other hand, Qiu Da, who was behind young Master Qiu, felt that Gu Yundong looked familiar. After a while, she suddenly widened her eyes. Seeing that young master was still going to flirt, she quickly pulled young Master Qiu to the back. Young master, don't do that. Young Master Qiu was originally in a position, but he was suddenly pulled and almost fell. He could not maintain his image at all. He immediately became angry and kicked Qiu Da. You dog slave. The young master has always been too good to you. Do you believe that he'll beat you to death for being so rude? Chioda could not cry out in pain after being kicked. He could only say in a low voice, "Young master, that's the lady beside that lord." What lord? I don't know what you're talking about. Young Master Chiu suddenly turned to look at Gu Yundong in shock. The latter crossed his arms and sneered as he watched the interaction between the master and servant. Young Master Chiu's heart skipped a beat, and he suddenly pulled Chioda away. Hurry, hurry, hurry. Let's go back to the residence. From today onwards, I won't go out for a month. Recently, I have been unlucky. However, after taking a few steps, she returned. He looked at Gu Yundong and thought for a moment. Then, he took out a banknote from his sleeve and silently handed it over. He tried his best to put on a smile. This is an apology to Guayuro Gu Xiaoxi. I know the ins and outs of the matter, but miss, you have to make that lord believe me. I really didn't know that Hong Xiaoni was so vicious that she almost killed her husband. But no matter what, this matter started because of me. If I hadn't taken a fancy to Hong Xiaoni, she wouldn't have such thoughts. I heard that little brother Gu has suffered a lot. Take this to buy him some food to nourish himself. Gu Yundong silently took the banknote and looked at it. 50 taels. He was quite generous. Seeing that she had accepted it, young Master Chiu quickly cupped his hands again. That's all. Goodbye. Also, it's not safe at night. It's better for you not to shop alone. If you meet a lecher like me in short, goodbye. Young Master Chiu quickly finished speaking and quickly ran away with Chioda. Chapter 1142. Very intense. Chapter 1142. Very intense. Gu Yundong's mouth twitched as she watched the two of them walk further and further away. She sighed inwardly. She seemed to have not said a word just now. A person couldn't be too dignified. Look at how scared he was. He didn't want the money after losing it. Gu Yundong silently kept the banknote and turned to look at the stall owner who had watched the entire process with his mouth agape. He said, "Don't think about reaping what you sow. People still have to do business properly. Hurry up and shout." Then, Gu Yundong turned around and returned to the inn. After all, the eyes of the stall owner were shining. In order not to be robbed, it was safer for her to hide in the house with a huge sum of money. When Xiao Qingyuan returned, he saw Gu Yundong looking at a banknote. He was blushing. He must have been drinking with the county magistrate. Gu Yundong quickly poured hot water for him to drink and asked the waiter to bring a basin of water to wipe his face. How did it go with the county magistrate? Everything else is fine. Butayuro, he's a little too enthusiastic. Really, that enthusiasm was because he did not care about Xiao Qingyuan's cold face at all. He rubbed his temples and asked her where the banknote in her hand came from. Gu Yundong told her about meeting young Master Chiu on the street. Of course, he did not mention that young Master Chiu had asked if he was married. He only said that he had given the banknote to apologize to his uncle. Xiao Qingyuan was silent. After a while he said, "Uncle seems to be quite rich now." The Zhou family had lost 50 taels of silver, and young Master Chiu had lost another 50 taels. There was 100 taels of silver here. Even if she asked the villagers of Great Rock Village, few of them might have 100 taels of silver in their hands. Gu Yundong patted his shoulder. "It's all thanks to you. Wasn't that so?" Which of these two parties didn't give so much for Xiao Qingyuan's sake? However, with this money, his uncle's future would definitely be better and better. Gu Yundong put away the banknote and would give them to Gu Xiaoxi tomorrow. The next day, she and Xiao Qingyuan directly left the room and went to Great Rock Village. When they arrived at the Gu residence, they saw Gu Xiaoxi and Xianxia with sweet expressions and exuding an aura of love that could not be ignored. They cooperated well and baked pancakes in the kitchen. The two of them did not talk. From time to time, they would look at each other and turn their faces away shyly. Even after a long time, there were only 2 or 3 pancakes. This speed was no different from a snail. Gu Yundong had been leaning against the kitchen door for a long time, but they did not notice her at all. She felt that if she didn't make a sound, she would probably turn into a stone statue and no one would be able to save her. "Uncle!" The two people in the kitchen were shocked and looked at the door. When they saw Gu Yundong, the two of them immediately felt embarrassed. Gu Yundong could not help but tremble after being fed another mouthful of dog food. Damn it, She had watched her parents show off their love at home. It was not easy for her to go out alone with brother Xiao, but she still had to be shown off by her uncle. They simply did not take her seriously. She also had brother Xiao, okay? Yundong, you're back. Gu Xiaoxi quickly washed her hands and came over. Have you and Qingyuan eaten? The porridge isn't ready yet. Have a piece of pancake first. Of course they had eaten. Look at the time. They had already returned from the county city, all right? It seemed that their wedding night was very intense. Gu Yundong hurriedly hit her own head to clear the messy thoughts in her mind. She said to Gu Xiaoxi, let's get down to business first. Chapter 1143. Enough silver. Chapter 1143. Enough silver. Gu Xiaoxi thought for a moment before remembering what the important matter was. She quickly nodded and said to Xianxia, Yaya, bake more for now. We still have to eat on the way. I'll go to Chief Chong and sell the house. We'll set off home in the afternoon. Okay, go ahead. Gu Xiaoxi and Gu Yundong came out. Gu Yundong was blinded by the happiness on his face and quickly ran to Xiao Qingyuan's side. The three of them went to Chief Chang's house and asked him to estimate the value of Gu Xiaoxi's house. In the end, Chief Chang bought Gu Xiaoxi's house with 6 taels of silver in the name of the clan. Gu Xiaoxi's house was not big, and it was sold in a hurry. The location was not good either, so he sold it for 6 taels of silver. In fact, if not for Gu Yundong and his companion, Chief Chang would have lowered the price. For Gu Xiaoxi, it was all right. Back then, when he built the house, he didn't have much money on him. He borrowed some from Uncle Zhou and built everything from scratch. It could be said that more than half of the house was built by him alone. Therefore, this house was his hard work. To be honest, he was a little reluctant to part with it. However, he was even more reluctant to part with his siblings. They were all waiting for him to go back. At the thought of this, Gu Xiaoxi couldn't wait any longer. After signing the contract with Chief Chang and taking the silver, the three of them returned. When they got home, Xianxia had already cooked porridge and prepared pancakes. After the 4 of them ate, Gu Yundong gave the 50 taels of silver to Gu Xiaoxi and told her about meeting young Master Qiu on the way. Gu Xiaoxi was stunned. He looked at the silver in disbelief. There's silver again? Had he been lucky recently? Why was it his turn to receive all the good things? His niece was still alive, and his brother and sister were waiting for him at home. The Zhou family had given him 50 taels of silver as compensation, and he had even married a wife he liked. Now he had money? Gu Xiaoxi couldn't help but look up at the sky. Why did it feel like a pie had suddenly fallen from the sky? Xianxia was also shocked. She felt like she was in a dream. Gu Yundong stuffed the banknote into his hands. All right, put them away quickly. When we return to Jianghu village, you still have to build a house, set up a feast, buy land, or start a small business. This 100 taels might not be enough. Gu Xiaoxi blinked. How is it not enough? This is 100 taels. It's definitely enough. Xiao Qingyuan pursed his lips. I hope you'll still think that way when you reach Jianghu village. Gu Yundong let the 2 of them digest it and quickly began to pack her things. Gu Xiaoxi and Xianxia did not have much luggage. Gu Xiaoxi only had 2 sets of clothes. Gu Yundong looked at the 2 sets of clothes that were filled with patches and cursed Hong Xiaoni in his heart. She glared at Gu Xiaoxi resentfully. Xianxia's dowry box had already been moved over. She didn't have many things. The box was only half full. When everything was loaded onto the carriage, Gu Xiaoxi took one last look at the house before locking the door and handing the key to Chief Chang. When their carriage left, everyone in Great Rock Village knew. Many people came out to take a look. Seeing that Xianxia was also here, everyone realized that she and Gu Xiaoxi were actually married. Eldest Aunt Zhou was also in the crowd. When she saw Xianxia in her new clothes with a flushed face, she was furious. When she returned, she could not help but find trouble with Hong Xiaoni again. Chapter 1144. Why didn't you mention the Gu family? Chapter 1144. Why didn't you mention the Gu family? You don't know how well that Gu Xiaoxi treated Xianxia. He even had to support her when she gets into the carriage. Their new clothes are very eye-catching. In the future, with a nephew-in-law who is a high official, Gu Xiaoxi will be rich. Xianxia will also rise in status. She might even have servants serving her in the future. Hong Xiaoni almost went crazy when she heard Aunt Zhou's words. How could it be? How could it be? Gu Xiaoxi had just divorced her and she was already married to Xianxia. How could he dare? She was clearly his wife. She should have followed him to enjoy wealth and glory. She should have servants to serve her. Why did he give it all to Xianxia? Why? Hong Xiaoni looked at her hands and slowly smiled again. Right, she was the one who personally pushed this fortune out. Why didn't she take action a few days later? Just a few more days and Gu Xiaoxi's nephew-in-law would have arrived. She would have struck gold. Eldest Aunt Zhou, who was outside, felt terrified when she heard her laughter. She quickly shook herself and went to work. Gu Yundong and the other three had already arrived at Haiyuan County. They first bought something in the county and paid the driver before setting off again. Xiao Qingyuan drove the carriage. Gu Xiaoxi was about the same age as him and was a man, so he naturally wanted to give it a try. Therefore, he sat on the shaft of the carriage and learned from Xiao Qingyuan. Only Gu Yundong and Xianxia were left in the carriage. Xianxia was a little embarrassed and nervous. She thought of how the Chong family's wife had told her about how she should get along with her mother-in-law and sister-in-law the night before the wedding. She could not help but whisper to Gu Yundong, Yundong, can you tell me about your parents? Xianxia did not know much about the Gu family. After all, she did not have much time to chat with Gu Xiaoxi in private. She only knew that Gu Xiaoxi had an older brother and sister. They were separated when they escaped from the famine. The older brother was Gu Yundong's father. He had studied and was a very powerful person whom Gu Xiaoxi admired. Her sister-in-law had hit her head a few years ago and was now like a child. Also, Gu Dafeng and his wife were easy to get along with. And how many children her brother and sister had. Xianxia didn't know anything else, especially about Gu Xiaoxi's parents. He didn't even mention them. Gu Yundong thought about it and said, then I'll tell you from the beginning. Actually, my father, eldest aunt, and younger uncle are half-brothers. The original Gu familia Euro, Gu Yundong told her about the Gu family without bias. Since Xianxia was married to his uncle, she had to know about his background. Xianxia listened attentively. When she heard that Gu Xiaoxi was bullied by her two biological brothers because her mother didn't like her, her face was filled with heartache. Slowly, she understood why he did not mention his parents or return to his hometown. Xianxia heaved a sigh of relief inexplicably. Madame Zhao was not easy to get along with. If she had such a mother-in-law, her future would probably not be good. Now that she was so far away from her mother-in-law and did not interact with her, she was the one making the decisions at home. Her life would definitely be much easier. Moreover, her brother, sister-in-law, and elder sister-in-law were all sensible people. Xianxia felt that she was already better off married than many girls. However, she was still nervous. After all, Gu Xiaoxi had never asked his brother and sister for their opinions when he got married. She was afraid that they would not be satisfied with her. Xianxia slowly approached the Xuanhe prefecture with trepidation. Chapter 1145. Come and meet Uncle. Chapter 1145. Come and meet Uncle. Gu Xiaoxi had been to the Xuanhe prefecture once, but Xianxia had never been there. Looking at the tall city gate, the anxiety in her heart reached an unprecedented peak. Upon seeing this, Gu Xiaoxi hurriedly reached out to shake his hand and whispered, "It's all right. My eldest sister and second brother are very good people. They will like you." Xianxia nodded, but she still could not control her nervousness. Gu Xiaoxi quickly diverted her attention. He looked at the city wall and said, "If only I had stayed in the Xuanhe prefecture for a few more days when I escaped. I might have met Yundong. Then, I wouldn't have to waste 2 years. It's such a pity." However, on second thought that was not right. Wouldn't he miss Xianxia too? Gu Xiaoxi quickly looked at her. The latter was puzzled. What's wrong? Gu Yundong shook her head speechlessly and turned to look out of the car window. He said to Xiao Qingyuan on the shaft, "Why are there so many people queuing up to enter the city today?" Xiao Qingyuan said, "I'll go ask." He jumped off the carriage and walked forward. Not long after, he returned and said to her with a smile, "The people from the Nye residence are back. There are a few carriages and some goods in front of them. They're all queuing up, so the line is slow." Gu Yundong was delighted. So Nye Shuang and Aunt Ku are back too? They had gone to the capital and been there for a few months. Previously, they said that it was because of Nye Kong. Now that they were back, The problem must have been resolved. I think so. Xiao Qingyuan nodded. Do you want to go and greet them? Gu Yundong looked up at the long line and then turned back to look at youngest Uncle Gu. She said, another day. They just came back today. I'm afraid they're very tired. It's better to bring youngest uncle home first. Okay. Xiao Qingyuan got into the shaft again and slowly moved forward with the team. When they entered the city, the sky was already a little dark. Xiao Qingyuan sped up and drove straight to the small courtyard. Gu Xiaoxi wasn't familiar with the prefectural city, but he could tell that it had changed a lot from the last time he came. It had only been 2 years, but it felt much more prosperous. Yundong said that she had a shop in Xuanhe Prefecture. How powerful was she to open a shop in the prefectural city? He had been looking for the shop called Gus along the way, but unfortunately, he couldn't see it. The carriage only gradually slowed down when it entered the school district. Unexpectedly, when it was about to reach the entrance of the alley, Xiao Qingyuan suddenly stopped. Gu Yundong had just lifted the curtain to look outside when she saw a few familiar children playing at the entrance of the alley. She was about to greet her when Gu Yunke saw her. The girl immediately rushed over like a cannonball and shouted happily, Eldest sister, you're back? Hearing the crisp voice, Gu Xiaoxi hurriedly lifted the curtain and saw that lively figure running in front of her. Gu Xiaoxi found the shape of the girl quite familiar. Xiao Qingyuan carried her into the carriage. The little girl immediately crawled in and threw herself into Gu Yundong's arms. Eldest sister, you're finally back. Father and eldest aunt are waiting for you. In order not to make them too sad, I dragged second brother and cousin to the alley to play. This way, I can see you the moment you come home. Am I very smart? She puffed out her chest and looked like she wanted to be praised. Gu Yundong laughed uncontrollably and nodded vigorously. Yes, Kiki is the smartest. Come, meet uncle. Chapter 1146. Too tragic. Chapter 1146. Too tragic. Gu Yundong turned the little girl around so that she could greet Gu Xiaoxi. Gu Xiaoxi looked at her with a face full of excitement and tears in his eyes. 2 years ago, she was a little girl who could only sleep in a wicker basket and could not even walk. Now she could run and jump healthily. Good. That's good. Are you Kiki? The little girl nodded vigorously. Are you uncle? Gu Xiaoxi reached out and carried the little girl over. Yes, I'm your uncle. Little Kiki has grown taller and prettier. The young lady immediately covered her face shyly. Then, she paused and lowered her head. She took out a date from her small bag and stuffed it into Gu Xiaoxi's mouth. After some thought, she took out dried fruits and placed them in his hand. Then, she raised her head and looked at him carefully. She muttered softly, "You're still too thin." Hence, she continued to dig around in her bag. After taking out a handful of melon seeds and stuffing them into the pocket of her clothes, she removed the entire bag from her neck. After a moment of silence, she gritted her teeth and stuffed it all into Gu Xiaoxi's arms. Gu Xiaoxi was speechless. Gu Yundong almost died of laughter when she saw the fearless expression on her face. Why did you give all your precious snacks to youngest uncle? Out of sight, out of mind. The little girl focused on Gu Yundong and said, Eldest aunt said that younger uncle had suffered a lot. He must not have been able to eat his fill in the past 2 years, and his clothes are not warm. He might even be missing an arm or a leg. That's really pitiful. I saw just now that what eldest aunt said is actually true. Younger uncle is so thin that he doesn't have any fat. It'll give him some nourishment. As she had stuffed a date into his mouth, Gu Xiaoxi had no choice but to eat it first. He had just finished eating and was about to speak when he was so frightened that he almost swallowed the core. He quickly coughed twice. Chang Yaya quickly made him spit out the core and let him take a sip of water from the water bag. Only then did he catch his breath. The little girl looked puzzled. Was that datea euro poisonous? Gu Xiaoxi waved her hand, smiled, and hung the small bag back around her neck. He said, Little uncle is quite good. He's not very miserable. Yes, you are. I really am not. It's too tragic. The little girl was very determined. A euro. Gu Yundong held back her laughter. 2 voices finally came from outside. Eldest sister. Let's go home first. Father and aunt are waiting at home. That's right. My mother and uncle must be anxious. Yunshu and Yuenji were a step behind Kiki, So when they saw Kiki being carried into the carriage, they noticed that other than eldest sister and uncle, there was also a woman in the carriage. This should be little Aunt Hong Xiaoni, right? Although they were also very excited and happy, they were already men now. Men couldn't casually squeeze in, so they stood by the carriage and waited until they were almost done speaking before reminding them. Gu Xiaoxi looked at the two children standing in front of the carriage, his eyes shining. Yunshu, Yuanji. Uncle. Uncle. Welcome home. Gu Xiaoxi was excited. Really, they were all here. It was great that everyone was here. Uncle, sit down first. Let's go back. Yunshu and Yuanji immediately turned around. They didn't get into the carriage but ran back to the alley. Gu Xiaoxi became even more excited and did not notice that Gu Yunke was looking at Xianxia curiously. It was Gu Yundong who introduced them. This is little aunt. Chapter 1147. Finally reunited. Chapter 1147. Finally reunited. When the carriage arrived at the small courtyard, Gu Dajiang and Gu Dafeng were already standing at the door and looking over anxiously. Seeing that the carriage had stopped, the two of them hurriedly went forward and lifted the curtain. They happened to meet Gu Xiaoxi, who had also come out. The three of them were stunned for a moment. Then, Gu Dafeng's eyes turned red. It's little brother. It's little brother. You've grown up and lost weight. Tears welled up in Gu Xiaoxi's eyes and he immediately jumped down from the carriage. Big sister. Gu Dafeng grabbed his hand and sized him up for a while. Did you suffer a lot? It's fine. Let's go home. With eldest sister and second brother around, you don't have to be afraid of anything in the future. Gu Dafeng grabbed his hand, her heart aching. He had really lost weight. Although he had never been fat when he was in old Gus' house, he was not so thin that he had lost his appearance. It was obvious that he had suffered a lot. Gu Dajiang stood at the side and slowly calmed down. Seeing that they were standing outside the door, he quickly said, all right. Go in first. Don't block the road. The group quickly entered the courtyard. Only then did the alley go smoothly. However, the neighbors were still very curious. Why was the Gu family always so lively? Which relatives had come? There was a heated discussion outside the door, but behind the door, there was already an excited scene. Gu Dajiang patted Gu Xiaoxi's shoulder and sighed. You've grown up. It had been 2 years since they last met, but there was a hint of frost on his face. Gu Xiaoxi wiped her face. Second brother, I'm sorry. Back then, I lost my sister-in-law and niece. You clearly entrusted them to me, but I still a euro. All right, let's not talk about this. It's all in the past. Yundong and the others are fine. Don't take it to heart and add to your burden. As Gu Dajiang spoke, he saw Xianxia standing at the side. He immediately smiled and asked, is this your wife? Gu Xiaoxi suddenly came to his senses and hurriedly pulled the extremely nervous Xianxia to his side. He said, yes, this is my wife. Eldest sister, second brother. I didn't tell you guys about my marriage. Don't be angry with me. Sigh, why should we be angry? We're too happy. Gu Dafeng waved her hand and pulled Xianxia to her side. She sized her up for a while and said with a smile, you're Xiaoni, right? You're really good looking. I can tell at a glance that you're a good girl. The scene fell silent. Gu Xiaoxi and Xianxia's expressions changed slightly. Gu Yundong coughed lightly and said, eldest aunt, this is little aunt. Her name is Xianxia. Gu Dafeng was stunned, and the others were also surprised. Wait, wasn't her name Hong Xiaoni? Gu Dafeng had even specially gone to the Su family to ask Mother Su these few days to confirm that she was called Hong Xiaoni. Gu Xiaoxi said, big sister, her name is Xianxia. As for Hong Xionia Euro, I have nothing to do with her anymore. Anyway, things are a little complicated. I'll tell you guys later. Gu Dafeng nodded repeatedly. I was wrong. I deserve to be punished. Your name is Yaya, right? Don't be nervous. Live a good life with Xiaoxi in the future. I will love you too. It was obvious that Xianxia was an obedient and diligent girl. In eldest Aunt Gus' eyes, Gu Xiaoxi was like her son. Now, she looked at Xianxia as if she was her daughter-in-law. Xianxia pursed her lips and nodded slightly, still looking very nervous. When the group finally sat down and began to talk, Xianxia finally heaved a sigh of relief. Chapter 1148. Fortunately, it's you. Chapter 1148. Fortunately, it's you. Gu Xiaoxi was the first to explain the situation between Xianxia and Hong Xiaoni. She briefly recounted how he and Hong Xiaoni had arrived at Great Rock Village, how they had lived in Great Rock Village, and how she had wanted to enter the Qiu mansion as a concubine some time ago, so she had colluded with the Zhou chief to plot against him and Xianxia. In the end, she had met Gu Yundong. The house was silent except for Gu Xiaoxi's calm voice. After he finished speaking, Gu Dafeng suddenly slapped the table. Why is this woman so vicious? If she wants to climb up the social ladder, so be it. Would Xiaoxi stop her from going? She insisted on harming two innocent people. Such a woman should be divorced and stay in the village for the rest of her life to drown in everyone's saliva. It's too disgusting. The others nodded, and Gu Dajiang clenched his fists. After a while, he looked at Xiao Qingyuan, who inexplicably felt a chill run down his spine. Unexpectedly, Gu Dajiang said, "Fortunately, it was you and Yundong who went to Great Rock Village. If you had brought your eldest aunt and me along, we would probably have been delayed on the way. If we were half a day late, I'm afraid we wouldn't have seen Xiaoxi again. Thankfully it was you." Therefore, he did not pursue the matter of Xiao Wen's absence. Gu Dajiang was a smart person. Xiao Wen wasn't among the things Gu Xiaoxi had said. In addition, they hadn't seen him when they returned to the small courtyard this time. Gu Dajiang guessed that Xiao Wen might not have followed them to Great Rock Village. This brought a euro when Gu Dafeng heard Gu Dajiang's words. He looked relieved and afraid. "That's right. It was so close. I almost didn't make it in time. When I think about how they wanted to burn Xiaoxi to death, my heart beat rapidly. All right, the matter is over. Now that it's a blessing in disguise, everyone is happy. Yes. In the future, if anyone bullies you, Big Sister will be the first to not let them off." The Gu family was very happy that day. Gu Xiaoxi's return meant that their family had finally reunited. As for the Gu family, other than mentioning how to bring Yuanji back, there was nothing else. There was no need for Gu Xiaoxi to know what happened to the Gu family. Gu Xiaoxi was different from Gu Dajiang and the others. Madame Zhao was his biological mother after all. Although she did not treat him well, she did not spare no effort to persecute and torture him like she did to Gu Dajiang. In any case, Gu Xiaoxi would be settled in the Xuanhe prefecture in the future. On this day, the Gu family's candles burned for the entire night without extinguishing. The joy of reuniting made them feel as if they were not tired at all. They only wanted to recount every detail during the 2 years of separation. Gu Xiaoxi knew that Gu Dajiang had passed the prefecture examination and was in second place. He knew that Gu Qiuyue had tortured eldest sister and brother-in-law for an entire year before she was finally free. Now, she had already started carving wood and was selling it at the market. The business was actually not bad. He knew that Yundong not only had a shop in the prefectural city, but he also had a workshop and fruit forest at home. He knew that Yunshu and Yuanji were both studying in school. He knew that Yunke had become a foodie who was especially passionate about cooking. He knew that his sister-in-law's condition was under control. As long as they found Bai Musi, she would be completely cured. Their lives were getting better and better. In the end, Gu Dafeng asked Gu Xiaoxi, "Although you and Yaya have signed the marriage contract, you still have to hold the banquet. After all, Yaya abandoned everything and followed you all the way here. We can't let her suffer." Chapter 1149. The Best Choice. Chapter 1149. The Best Choice. Xianxia was stunned. She looked up at Gu Dafeng in disbelief. After she followed Gu Xiaoxi and rejected Chief Chang's suggestion to hold a banquet, she never thought of wearing the wedding dress again. She did not expect that her eldest aunt would actually take the initiative to mention it. She looked at Gu Xiaoxi, who immediately nodded. "I think so too. I also want to hold a banquet and let eldest sister and second brother watch us get married." Without the blessings and witness of his family, the marriage would not be perfect. Xianxia pursed her lips and lowered her head slightly. Slowly, the corners of her mouth curled up. Gu Dajiang glanced at Xiao Qingyuan again, and the latter's back stiffened. The frequency of his future father-in-law looking at him today was a little high. Unexpectedly, Gu Dajiang said, "There's a good day at the end of August. I've gotten someone to calculate it. It's the best and most suitable day for wedding this year. If we hold a banquet on this day, the new couple will be harmonious for the rest of their lives. I originally wanted Yundong to get married that day, But you're her uncle and have already signed the marriage contract. Why don't you get married first and let them choose another date next year? Next year. Definitely not. Xiao Qingyuan hurriedly said, why don't we get married together? It'll be lively. Uncle hasn't been in the Xianxia prefecture for long, and he doesn't know many people. It's a little cold to hold a wedding banquet alone. Why don't we hold a big one? Besides, although uncle's seniority is high, he's about the same age as me. Wouldn't it be a good thing for two couples to hold the wedding together? Gu Dajiang looked at him with a faint smile. It's rare to hear you say so much in one go. He did not retort and seemed to agree. Xiao Qingyuan heaved a sigh of relief and couldn't help but smile. Unexpectedly, when he and Yundong went to Great Rock Village, Uncle Gu had already chosen the date. It was already May, and there were still 3 to 4 months to the end of August. At that time, the weather had already begun to cool down, so it was not very painful. All right, it's getting late. Go and rest first. We'll talk later. Gu Dajiang hurried everyone to rest. It was already very late, so everyone rested in the small courtyard. They could still stay if they squeezed. Gu Yundong realized that the house was still too small. Gu Xiaoxi and Xianxia were in the same room. Even though they had been traveling for a day, Xianxia did not feel sleepy at all. After a while she grabbed his hand and suddenly whispered, your brother and sister are fine. I'll get along well with them in the future. The only response she got was Gu Xiaoxi's steady breathing. She turned her head to look at him and moved her head closer to him. Gu Xiaoxi subconsciously hugged her tightly and covered her with the blanket. After a long time, a low voice sounded in the room again. Marrying you might be the best choice I've made in my life. As everyone had chatted late the day before, it was almost noon when they woke up the next day. Gu Yundong still had to find Aunt Ku and bring Kiki along. As for Yunshu and Yuanji, they were going to attend classes at Tianhai Academy today. It was said that a rather famous teacher was coming. It was a rare opportunity for Yunshu and her brother. They couldn't miss it. Before Gu Yundong left, he asked Gu Xiaoxi, do you want me to bring you out for a walk? Gu Xiaoxi thought for a moment. All right. Hence, Gu Yundong brought the two of them into the carriage. However, just as the carriage drove out of the alley, another person entered. Chapter 1150. Get out of the carriage. Chapter 1150. Get out of the carriage. The 4-person party became a 5-person party. Gu Yundong looked at Xiao Qingyuan speechlessly. Don't you have to report to the prefecture magistrate? There's no hurry. It doesn't matter if he waits a day or two. I'll ask Aunt Ku about the situation in the capital. They went to Aunt Ke's house, but she was not there. The neighbor said that she went to New Tea Pavilion. Gu Yundong did not expect Aunt Ku to be so dedicated to her work. She had just returned and had already gone to work the next day. The carriage could only turn around and head towards New Tea Pavilion. However, halfway there, Gu Yundong chased Xiao Qingyuan and Gu Xiaoxi down. Gu Xiaoxi was dumbfounded. Why did you ask me to come down? Can't I go to that New Tea Pavilion? New Tea Pavilion only serves female guests. You're a man. What if you scare those female guests? Gu Xiaoxi widened her eyes. There's such a tea house? Gu Yundong nodded. So, let Brother Xiao show you around other places. I'll bring Aunt over to take a look. We'll have dinner at Jianghu restaurant later. As she spoke, she got Lu Sheng to drive away, leaving Gu Xiaoxi and Xiao Qingyuan looking at each other. The two of them stood by the street for a long time before Gu Xiaoxi asked, so, where are we going now? Xiao Qingyuan thought about it and said, Jianghu restaurant. Gu Xiaoxi was speechless. Wasn't it supposed to be the last place where they gathered for dinner? However, Xiao Qingyuan had already taken the lead and walked towards the Jianghu restaurant. To bring a man shopping? Forget it. Let's go to the restaurant to listen to books. It was said that the Jianghu restaurant had also brought in storytellers recently and began to talk about the cowpox vaccination method. It was quite strange. This matter had already been a few months ago. How could it still be so popular now? Gu Yundong did not know that Xiao Qingyuan had gone straight to their destination to wait for them. She introduced the New Tea Pavilion to Xianxia. The New Tea Pavilion mainly entertains female guests. There are also children who like to go there and meet new friends. The little girl who was peeling the melon seeds one by one and planning to eat them, looked up in confusion when she heard her name. Gu Yundong raised her hand and patted her head. She took away the melon seeds that Kiki had placed on the low table and stuffed them into her mouth. Gu Yunka? What happened just now? Where were her melon seeds? The most popular thing in New Tea Pavilion is milk tea. However, it's not good to drink too much milk tea. It's easy to gain weight. Therefore, the female shop assistants will remind those madams and young ladies who often order milk tea to try other things, such as flower tea, black tea, ginger tea, fruit tea, and some snacks and pastries. They're all selling well. You can try them when we reach the shop. Xianxia quickly shook her head. They sound very expensive. I don't want them. She had heard it clearly. Yundong said that the people who went to the shop were all madams and young ladies. It was obvious that they were rich. Their food and drinks were definitely not cheap. Kiki peeled a few more melon seeds. Just as she raised her head to rest, she replied, "It's expensive if they're sold to others, but it won't be expensive for little Aunt to drink." Xianxia liked Kiki very much and immediately asked her with a smile, "Why?" "Because my sister owns the shop." She thought for a moment and shook her head. "No, my sister owns it with someone else." Xianxia suddenly raised her head. "She Euro opened it?" As they spoke, the carriage stopped at the entrance of New Tea Pavilion. Chapter 1151. She's Too Attractive. Chapter 1151. She's Too Attractive. Gu Yundong was the first to get out of the carriage. She carried the little girl who was busy stuffing melon seeds into her mouth. When Xianxia came down, she was shocked. This was New Tea Pavilion? Wasn't it just a small shop? It was actually so big. Moreover, this New Tea Pavilion was too beautifully renovated and rich. There were actually 2 floors, and it was filled with guests, all of whom had high statuses. Xianxia could not move her feet for a moment. It was only when Kiki blocked her and Gu Yundong from both sides that she brought her into New Tea Pavilion. Gu Yundong had not been here for a while. The New Tea Pavilion was even livelier than before. It was not even noon, but the lobby on the first floor was already full. The shop assistants were a little busy. Lan Huar was also there. She had just returned from delivering a cup of milk tea. When she saw Gu Yundong, her face lit up and she hurriedly welcomed him. "Boss Gu, you're here. What do you want to drink? I'll send it to you." There was an empty room in New Tea Pavilion for the owners. Gu Yundong only sat in the other rooms when she first came. Later on, she went to specific rooms. Gu Yundong looked around and asked her, "Where's Aunt Ku?" Aunt Ku and Madame Chiu are talking inside. They seem to be discussing something. I'll call them. Lan Huar was about to leave. Gu Yundong stopped her. "No need. Let's wait for them to discuss it first. This is my aunt. Bring us 2 cups of milk tea and 1 cup of milk for Kiki." "All right, boss." Gu Yundong brought Xianxia, who was very cautious and did not know where to put her hands and feet, into the backyard. Only then did Xianxia realize that this New Tea Pavilion not only had 2 floors, but there was also such a huge courtyard at the back that had so many rooms. Kiki led the way with familiarity. She didn't expect to almost bump into a young lady just as she turned a corner. The young lady was about Kiki's age. Her face was filled with tears, as if she had just cried. Kiki thought that she had scared her to tears. She quickly touched her face and felt that it was not scary. Then she said nervously, "I'm sorry. I walked too quickly. Don't cry. Does it hurt? I'll blow on it for you, okay? Let me tell you, my blowing is especially good. My brother fell and he was painful. I'll blow on him and he'll be fine." "Really?" The young lady opposite her was stunned. Before she could say anything, a servant girl ran over from afar. "Fifth Miss, so you're here. Why did you run out? Why didn't you tell me? What if we can't find you?" The 5th Miss said unhappily, "Third sister and 4th sister both despise me for being young and don't bring me along to play." I don't care. I don't want to play with them anymore. I've found a new friend. I'll ignore them in the future and won't give them anything to eat." Then, she grabbed Kiki's hand and snorted at the maid. Kiki blinked. So she had made new friends again? Was she so attractive? It was unbelievable. The servant girl did not know whether to laugh or cry. It was useless to snort at her. She was just a servant girl. She could not force 3rd Miss and 4th Miss to play with her. She looked up and was stunned when she saw Gu Yundong. "Are you Boss Gu?" Gu Yundong nodded.
I am.
She smiled at the little girl and asked, "What happened?" The maidservant shook her head. How could she tell anyone about her master?
However, the fifth young lady was very angry and said it out loud.
Chapter 1152. Gu Yundong choked. Chapter 1152. Gu Yundong choked. My third and fourth sisters are drawing, writing, and playing chess in the house. I want to play too, but they say that I'm young and won't play with me. How am I young? I'm already 4 years old. When Kiki heard this, her eyes lit up. You're 4 years old? I'm 5. Why don't you be 5 too? This way, we'll be the same age and can play together. Fifth Miss held her hand. Really? Then that's fine. I'll be 5 years old. Gu Yundong was speechless. Ha! You can be however old you want? The two of them did not see the shocked expressions of the 3 adults present. They had already walked hand in hand to a room not far away. The maidservant suddenly reacted and hurriedly wanted to stop the fifth Mississippi. Gu Yundong immediately said, "It's fine. Let her play in our room for a while. I'll watch over her. Don't worry." Buta Euro. Alternatively, you can follow us to the side room to watch over the fifth Mississippi.
The maidservant hesitated for a moment before saying, "Then I'll have to trouble Boss Gu."
She did not have to take care of fifth Miss alone. Third Miss and fourth Miss were in another room. After all, Boss Gu was the owner of New Tea Pavilion. She valued the reputation and safety of New Tea Pavilion the most. With her around, nothing would happen. Gu Yundong waited for the maidservant to leave before leading Xianxia, who had been silent, into the room. The 2 young ladies in the room had already started chatting. Their words were innocent and cute, but they spoke seriously. I've already decided that I don't like my third and fourth sisters anymore. Unless they beg me, I won't talk to them. Kiki nodded.
Yes, my second brother often begs me.
How does he beg you?
Kiki tilted her head and thought for a moment before saying, He begs me in his heart.
I can hear him. Gu Yundong almost spat out a mouthful of water. You are good. Why didn't I know that there was such a superpower? Fifth Miss cried like a storm. But I can't hear third sister and fourth sister begging me. What should I do? Kiki patted her shoulder and comforted her. Let me teach you. Come, in your mind, imagine your third and fourth sisters begging you.
Fifth Miss closed her eyes and thought hard.
Then, she nodded.
I thought of it.
Yes, think a little harder. Do you feel relieved now?
I've vented my anger.
Do you forgive them?
They're forgiven. That's good.
The Euro cough, cough, cough. Gu Yundong choked in the end. She clutched her stomach and almost stood up. Her face was red. Kiki panicked and quickly ran to her. She tried her best to stand on her toes and pat her back. Big sister, are you all right? Why are you so careless? You're already so old, yet you can still choke on water. You're making me very worried. Thank you, really. Gu Yundong finally calmed down and felt less uncomfortable. Unexpectedly, when she looked up, she realized that Xianxia was also trying her best to hold back her laughter. Ever since Xianxia entered the room, she did not know where to put her hands and feet. It was only when she heard the children's childish words that she slowly relaxed. She tried her best to suppress the smile on her face and gradually let go of the 2 children. Actually, the older children are not willing to play with the younger ones, so you can find someone of similar age and play with something else. Play with something else? What? Chapter 1153. Something kids play with. Chapter 1153. Something kids play with. Fifth Miss tilted her little head and looked curious. I know how to flip a flower rope and pitch pot, but they still despise me for being too young and say that I don't have the strength. Humph. Xianxia was stunned. Many things played by children from the countryside flashed across her mind, such as jumping on a horse, throwing mud, hitting a rat, throwing stones, and so on. However, these things did not seem to be suitable here. These children were all young ladies from wealthy families. They played elegantly. Didn't they hear what she said just now? Drawing, playing chess and writing. No one was willing to get mud on them. Facing Fifth Miss' expectant gaze, Xianxia instantly felt a little guilty. She could not help but look at Gu Yundong, who stroked her chin thoughtfully. After a while, she suddenly said, That's a problem. I have an idea, but it will take some time. As she spoke, she stroked Fifth Miss' head and said softly, I have something fun here, but I haven't made it yet. You have to wait for a while. Can you play with Kiki first? When it's done, Kiki will be the first to invite you over to play, okay? Fifth Miss instantly shifted her gaze and met Gu Yundong's eyes. Her face was filled with excitement.
Something fun?
What is it? You'll see. Be patient. Okay. Fifth Miss was comforted and immediately went to flip the flower rope with Kiki. Lan Huar quickly brought in milk tea and milk. Gu Yundong gave Xianxia a cup. Xianxia only felt that the cup was filled with a sweet fragrance. She could not help but swallow her saliva and lower her head to take a careful sip. Then her eyes lit up. It was really delicious. No wonder so many madams and young ladies like to come to New Tea Pavilion. The thing called milk tea could really make one's tongue taste sweet. Xianxia's face was filled with happiness. After drinking half a cup, she suddenly came to her senses. She hurriedly put down the cup and turned to look at Gu Yundong. Unexpectedly, Gu Yundong took out a piece of paper and a brush from somewhere and was seriously drawing something. She carefully leaned over and looked at it carefully but she didn't understand. But seeing how focused Gu Yundong was, she did not dare to make a sound to disturb her. She simply watched the two children play. Occasionally, she would take a sip of milk tea and look at the scenery outside the window. Such a quiet and comfortable atmosphere was a lifestyle that Xianxia had never experienced before. If only a Xiaoxi was here too. As she was thinking, there was a knock on the door. Xianxia was shocked and quickly stood up to open the door. There were two middle-aged women standing at the door. When Xianxia saw their expressions, her body instantly became stiff and reserved. Fortunately, Gu Yundong's voice quickly sounded from behind. Madam Qiu, Aunt Ku, you're here. Come in quickly.
Xianxia immediately made way to let the two in.
Madam Qiu was slightly stunned when she saw Fifth Miss playing at the side. When Kiki saw Aunt Ku smiling sweetly at her, she didn't rush over and throw herself into her arms because she still had to accompany her heartbroken friend who had been abandoned by her two sisters. Gu Yundong introduced Xianxia to them before saying, I heard from Lan Huar that you went to discuss something. It seems to be quite important. What is it? Do you want to tell me? There's indeed something I want to resolve. Since Boss Gu is here, let's discuss it together. Madam Qiu nodded and sat opposite Gu Yundong. Chapter 1154. Children's Playground. Chapter 1154. Children's Playground. Gu Yundong was all ears. What surprised her was that Madam Qiu and Aunt Ku were discussing the same thing as her. Madam Qiu explained the recent situation of New Tea Pavilion. Ever since young Master Xiao became famous in the prefectural city, the business of this milk tea shop has improved. Ordinary people might not know about Xiao Qingyuan and Gu Yundong's relationship, but how could the wealthy families in the city not know? They would find out after a simple investigation. So there were especially many madams and young ladies who came to the shop. There were many wives and children. There were not many rooms that were filled with childishness. However, these young children especially liked such a room and were unwilling to give it up. Later on, Madam Qiu thought that she might as well let the children play together and let the servants watch over them. Then, there would be no need to snatch the room. However, a new problem arose. The younger children could not stay in the room for too long, especially when they saw the older young masters and young ladies drawing and reading. They felt especially bored and shouted to find their mother. After they found their mothers, because the room was too strict, they were dissatisfied again. Therefore, the backyard of New Tea Pavilion would often become chaotic, affecting the other guests. Thus, Madam Qiu started discussing this matter with Aunt Ku, who specialized in taking care of children. Gu Yundong smiled when she heard that. She turned the piece of paper that she had just drawn around to show them. Madam Qiu tilted her head and stared at it for a long time, but she couldn't figure it out. She asked in confusion, "What is this?" "This is called a slide. It's specially for children to play with. There are also small swings beside it, small wooden horses, and seesaws. When the time comes, the young children who can't sit still can come to this area to play." The backyard of New Tea Pavilion was big enough. They could specially open a large room with soundproof walls. The ground was covered with a thick carpet, so they were not afraid of the child falling. They also found 2 people to specially look after the child. These kids would love it, she thought. New Tea Pavilion's business was booming, and problems followed. When faced with such a situation, they naturally had to think of a way to resolve it. Gu Yundong used to like the children's area specially set up by some restaurants. When adults ate, they chatted for a long time. Most of the children were impatient and could not sit still. Their parents could not let them run around in the restaurant. At this time, the children's area was very convenient. Madame Chio's eyes lit up as she listened to Gu Yundong's explanation. There was no need for a large space. There was no need for them to stay quietly. They would not despise the room for not being child-friendly. Good, very good. Madame Chio clapped her hands and said, "Let's do that." Boss Gu, are you going to do this? Gu Yundong thought of Bien Han. His uncle's legs were much better now. He used to be a carpenter, so carpentry was not a problem. However, carpentry jobs were not easy to find, so he gradually began to carve some exquisite things. The slide could be made of many small wooden blocks. Bien Han was used to carving, so he must be very careful and patient when making this thing. At the same time, she would take care of her uncle's business. This was a huge deal. Gu Yundong nodded. All right, leave this to me. The few of them discussed the design carefully again. Madame Chio went out to work in satisfaction and took the sleepy fifth miss away. Only Aunt Ku was left in the room. Gu Yundong then asked about her trip to the capital. Chapter 1155. Fortunately, not long. Chapter 1155. Fortunately, not long. Aunt Ku hugged little Kiki and kissed her passionately for a while. It made her giggle for a while before she let go. Then, she talked about the reason for going to the capital. Nyetsong caused some love debt in the capital. It's not a big deal. I accompanied his mother to the capital. It's fine now. As she spoke, she sighed. It's better to come back. The weather in the capital isn't suitable. Xianxia Prefecture is more comfortable. Gu Yundong nodded. After all, I'm in the Xianxia Prefecture. The corners of Aunt Ke's mouth twitched. They had not seen each other for more than half a year. Why was this woman still so shameless? She even said it in a serious and self-righteous manner without any shyness. She glanced sideways at Gu Yundong and changed the topic. By the way, Nye Shuang has taken a fancy to a suitable shop in the capital and bought it. He said that it will be used to open new tea pavilion in the future. I've helped to take a look. The location is indeed not bad. Do you want Feng Danning to continue to help repair it in the capital or look for it locally? They had been planning to open a new tea pavilion in the capital for a long time. Gu Yundong only knew Song Dajiang in the capital. Madame Dai and Nye Shuang knew many people, so they had always asked people to pay attention to suitable shops in the capital. Now that they had found it, it was naturally a happy thing. However, when it would open for business was still debatable. It was necessary to renovate it first. As for the renovatory Euro, Gu Yundong said, I have to ask Uncle Feng. After all, it's a long journey to the capital. It will take a lot of time to go back and forth. Aunt Ke nodded and thought of something else. When are you and Xiao Qingyuan getting married?
Ahem, the end of August.
Aunt Ke raised her eyebrows. Have you chosen a date?
It was chosen yesterday.
Aunt Ke thought for a moment and said, with your mother's current situation, she can't prepare you for the wedding. After all, Dafeng has just arrived at the Xianxia Prefecture not long ago. There are some things she doesn't understand. If you need it, I can help you.
Of course I need it.
Gu Yundong had long treated Aunt Ku as her own elder. Previously, when she was away from home for a few months, it was Aunt Ku who took care of the family. Moreover, Gu Yundong knew that it was more appropriate to leave these matters to Aunt Ku. When Aunt Ku heard her answer without hesitation, she nodded and took over the matter with satisfaction. I'll discuss it with your eldest aunt and the others when the time comes. Gu Yundong quickly told her about Gu Xiaoxi and Xianxia. When the time came, the two pairs would get married together. Aunt Ke had an idea. Gu Yundong chatted with her for a while longer. Seeing that it was getting late, she left New Tea Pavilion with Xianxia and Kiki and headed for Xianxia restaurant. When the three of them entered the room, Gu Yundong noticed that there were many peanuts and snacks on the table. More than half of them had been eaten. She was immediately curious. Have you been here for a long time? Xiao Qingyuan was calm.
Not long.
Gu Xiaoxi smiled. I've heard 3 stories from the storyteller. It's really nice. Gu Yundong. A euro. Xianxia immediately sat beside Gu Xiaoxi and asked softly, what story did you tell? I'll tell you when we get back. he whispered into her ear. Xiao Qingyuan coughed lightly as if nothing had happened. He raised his voice and called out to the waiter outside, "Serve the dishes." Gu Yundong held back her laughter. After dinner, the few of them stopped shopping. Now that the weather was gradually getting hot, they would often be covered in sweat when they went out in the afternoon. Gu Yundong brought them to Xingtao Street to look for eldest Aunt Gu. Chapter 1156. Discussing business with Uncle. Chapter 1156. Discussing business with Uncle. Ever since she found out about youngest Uncle Gus' whereabouts at the Su residence, Gu Yundong had rushed home with eldest Aunt Gu. Hence, Gu Yundong had never taken a closer look at the house she rented. When she came in again, the house had changed drastically. Bien Han was a carpenter and was best at repairs. Not only did he have a few more shelves in the courtyard, but he also had 2 more benches. Eldest Aunt Gu was very happy to see them. She quickly showed them around her courtyard. Although it's rented and not very big, it's enough for the 3 of us to live in. There's also a small warehouse here with some trinkets carved by his father. Gu Yundong went to look at the carvings. Compared to the small carvings at the beginning, these carvings were more exquisite now. These wooden carvings were in sets. According to eldest Aunt Gu, these sets of wooden carvings were especially popular. There were even some customers who would customize their wood carvings when they saw that something was missing. It seemed that eldest Aunt's business was not bad. After coming out of the warehouse, Gu Yundong turned around and said to Bien Han, "Uncle, I have a business deal to discuss with you. I wonder if you're interested." Bien Han was stunned. "Business?" "Yes, I want to hire you to help me make a set of things." Bien Han immediately waved his hand. "Yundong, just tell me what you want to do. I can do it immediately. You're treating me like an outsider if you talk about business." Eldest Aunt Gu also nodded at the side. That's right. You're still talking about money with Aunt and Uncle?" Gu Yundong did not know whether to laugh or cry. "Aunt, if I ask Uncle to do it myself, I would definitely not be polite. But this is a job in the shop. How can I take advantage of Uncle?" From the shop, Gu Dafeng was surprised. "New tea pavilion?" Gu Yundong nodded. Gu Dafeng immediately became excited. New tea pavilion was not Yundong's own business. Of course, the accounts had to be clearly divided. She did not refuse. Then what else does the new tea pavilion need him to do? Do you want to carve things? Do you have any requirements for wood? Bien Han rubbed his hands excitedly as he listened from the side. New tea pavilion's business. From Yundong's words, it was a big business. Among the people present, only Chang Yaya knew what kind of job it was. Xiao Qingyuan and Gu Xiaoxi were both confused. Gu Yundong entered the house with a smile and showed Bien Han the drawings he had made earlier. "This is a slide. It's not a small carving. It's a bigger one. It's for children to play with. Can Uncle make it?" Bien Han took the blueprints over. He could not understand the blueprints at first, especially the blueprints drawn by Gu Yundong. Only someone like Feng Danning, who had worked with her before, could understand them at a glance. However, Bien Han had been staying in the small courtyard for the past few days. Gu Yundong and Gu Dajiang had painted a lot, so he would also ponder over it. In addition, a portion of the set of things he had carved previously had been drawn by Gu Yundong, so he was quite familiar with this. However, the blueprint this time was of a larger size. He needed Gu Yundong to explain it to him in detail. Bien Han's eyes lit up as he listened. He looked at the blueprint again and again. After a while he said, "Independent Illinois, try it first and make a small one first." Seeing how cautious he was, Gu Yundong felt that there was no problem. Bien Han immediately took a piece of wood and began to work while Gu Yundong and the rest went to the Su residence. Chapter 1157. High Pei. Chapter 1157. High Pei. After returning from Great Rock Village, Gu Yundong felt that she still had to make things clear to Mother Su about Hong Xiaoni. Gu Xiaoxi also wanted to visit Mother Su. When she first came to the Xuanhe Prefecture, Mother Su had also taken care of him. Moreover, it was Mother Su who told Gu Yundong about him. That was why their family was reunited. They were truly grateful to her. Xiao Qingyuan was holding the gifts in his hand when the group entered the Su residence. Mother Su had yet to recognize Gu Xiaoxi at a glance. It was only when she heard him introduce himself that she suddenly reacted. However, She saw Xianxia standing beside Gu Xiaoxi. Hong Xionia Euro was not around. Mother Su was stunned for a moment until Gu Yundong told her the whole story. Mother Su was silent for a while after hearing that. In the end, she sighed and said, I really didn't expect things to turn out like this. Fortunately, you guys went early and saved her in time. Speaking of this, Mother Su suddenly felt a little lucky. When Hong Xiaoni came to visit 2 years ago, she didn't force them to stay at her house. Otherwise, with Hong Xiaoni's character, who knew what kind of storm she would cause to the family? No matter what, everyone was happy. Gu Yundong and the rest returned to the Bian family when they were almost done in the Su family. In just one afternoon, Bian Han had already completed the small slide model. It was very exquisite and small. Gu Yundong's eyes lit up when she saw it. Kiki couldn't bear to put it down. She looked at Bian Han expectantly. The latter laughed and patted her head. When the slide is ready, I'll give this to Kiki. Thank you, uncle. The little girl jumped up happily. Bian Han then looked at Gu Yundong and asked, Is this feasible? Of course. Not only that, Gu Yundong looked at the small model and suddenly thought of something else. A kind of small DIY house. With all the components ready, one could build the house by oneself. Gu Yundong felt that other than wood carvings, his uncle might be able to expand and make such small toys in the future. However, it was still too early to talk about this. At least, it had to wait until he finished the work at hand. She just didn't know if his uncle wanted to focus on carving, or if he wanted to earn more money with more novel things. Gu Yundong looked at the slide model again and said to Bian Han, Since there's no problem, let's talk about the salary next. I've talked to Madame Chiu about making the full set of parts like the slide swing and seesaw. The salary is 20 taels. Of course, this is our offer. Uncle can negotiate. 20 taels? And it was negotiable? Bian Han and Gu Dafeng were both shocked. Gu Xiaoxi, who was at the side, also widened his eyes and gasped. Was the salary in the prefecture Capitala Euro so high? Bian Han hurriedly shook his head. Too much. Yundong, I know you're taking care of me, but you gave me such a high salary. It's hard for you to explain to the other owners. This is not good, not good. Gu Yundong smiled. Uncle, you're thinking too much. I didn't take care of you. This was Madame Chiu's suggestion in the first place. You can ask Aunt. She heard it too. Xianxia immediately nodded. When she heard the price, she was also shocked. One had to know that all her savings for several years back then were only 3 taels of silver. Gu Yundong smiled. Besides, this job is not as easy as you think. Chapter 1158. Half a month later. Chapter 1158. Half a month later, first of all, the slide and swings are for children, so they have to be very sturdy. At the very least they have to be safe. They have to be smooth and not have wooden spikes. Secondly, this thing has to be very strong. If the wood used is even the slightest bit substandard, it can't be used. Secondly, this slide requires a year of after-sales maintenance in the future. Bian Han was puzzled. What do you mean by after-sales maintenance? You just have to check the repairs every once in a while to see if there's anything that's old and inappropriate. You have to repair and adjust it in time. Bian Han was enlightened. That's not a problem. Not to mention a year, even if it's 8 to 10 years, it'll still go. There was no need for 8 to 10 years. After all, New Tea Pavilion's business was good. When the slide was old, it would definitely be replaced generously. There's one last point. Uncle, your legs have just recovered after all. Some rough and tiring work is still not suitable for you. I'm thinking, can we hire a small worker to help? Bian Han was stunned. He had really never thought about this. But what Gu Yundong said made sense. It was not easy for him to treat his leg. If it broke again because of this, it would be a huge loss. But who should he hire? Bian Han was conflicted. Gu Xiaoxi hurriedly pointed at herself and said, brother-in-law, I can help you. Bian Han turned to look at him, and his eyes suddenly lit up. Yes, Xiaoxi had just arrived at the Xuanhe prefecture, and she didn't have any work to do now. He was also young and capable, and he was family. He didn't have to worry about leaking Yundong's blueprint. He was the most suitable candidate. All right, then help me. We'll split the money we earn equally. Gu Xiaoxi hurriedly waved her hand. How can we split it equally? I'm just a helper. I don't know much about carpentry. If we split the wages equally, what kind of person would I be? Buta Euro Gu Xiaoxi said, if we split it equally, I'll quit.
Seeing this, Gu Yundong could only say to Bien Han, Uncle, it's indeed not appropriate to split it equally.
Why don't we do this? Since Uncle is here to help, you'll give him the salary of the workers in the prefectural city. How about that? Bien Han thought about it and nodded in agreement. In the following days, Bien Han and Gu Xiaoxi started to get busy. Because they had to check the location and size of the rooms, the closing time of the new tea pavilion had been adjusted for the past few days. It was brought forward by an hour. After the guests had left, Bien Han brought Gu Xiaoxi to take a look at the location. When he was almost done with his research, he started to do it. Because of this, Xianxia stayed with Gu Xiaoxi at the Bien family's house and took care of their meals and daily necessities. Anyway, Yuanji and Yunshu had already returned to Fengkai County to attend classes. Hence, the couple also had a room to stay in and it was not crowded. Bien Han temporarily stopped carving, so Gu Dafeng naturally had less time to go to the market. Hence, she and Aunt Ku prepared for the wedding of Gu Yundong and Gu Xiaoxi. With Aunt Ke's suggestion, Gu Dafeng felt much more at ease. From the beginning, she was afraid that she would not do well. After all, she was just a countryside woman. If she was preparing for the wedding, most of it would be arranged according to the standards of the countryside. However, Yundong and Qingyuan's identities were different now. If they were doing the countryside style, they would look much more petty and would be laughed at. With Aunt Ku around, Gu Dafeng only needed to help from the side and learn more about the rules here. Half a month later, the slide of New Tea Pavilion was finally completed. Chapter 1159. New Tea Pavilion has a new thing. Chapter 1159. New Tea Pavilion has a new thing. Madame Dai and Ye Shuang both knew about slides, but they had never seen one before. They had only heard Madame Chiu give them a rough idea. Gu Yundong had always been proficient in publicity, and it was the same this time. 2 days ago, she had already informed the guests that New Tea Pavilion would be launching new things today. They were specially prepared for guests with children at home. Everyone was interested when they heard that. The things in New Tea Pavilion had always been novel and would not disappoint anyone. This time, it was said that Boss Gu had personally prepared it. Even Madame Dai and eldest Miss Nye had never seen it before. Driven by curiosity, both the women who were taking care of the children and the young ladies who were not married yet all appeared at the entrance of New Tea Pavilion. The slide was already in the room. Beside Gu Yundong stood the excited Bien Han and Gu Xiaoxi. After all, they were the ones who made it. They could explain it in front of everyone. Fifth Miss, who had almost bumped into Kiki that day, had also come. Now, she was holding Kiki's hand and saying proudly to her third and fourth sisters. Sister Gu said that she suddenly had this idea after hearing my words. That's why Kiki and I are the first to play. You can't compete with me, understand? Her third and fourth sisters were surprised. They didn't know that the new thing from New Tea Pavilion was actually related to their sister. When the madam and young lady heard this, they immediately became even more curious. The slide was covered with a cloth. Madame Dai was holding a corner in her hand, and so was Nye Shuang. Someone said impatiently, "Shouldn't we pull it open? Everyone is almost here." Madame Dai looked at Gu Yundong, who nodded. Madame Dai and Nye Shuang took a deep breath. Their eyes were also filled with anticipation as they reached out and pulled down. With a crash, the cloth on the slide fell to the ground, revealing what was inside. Everyone focused their gazes and saw a strange-looking large object standing in the middle. Everyone did not understand. They only knew that this thing had a ladder. After going up, there was a small house, but the roof of the house was in the shape of a mushroom. It looked especially bright and interesting. There were 2 slipways beside the house. One was straight, and the other was circular. On the other side of the house was a net. There were handrails on both sides that allowed people to walk over. After passing through the net, there was a small roof. The roof was in the shape of a windmill. It looked like they were in the suburbs and free. There was also a slide here that was slightly higher. There was a fence beside the entire large object. The fence was also shaped. There were even paintings on it. They looked like some small animals and were very cute. Everyone could not help but be curious. What is this? It looks strange. I've never seen it before. Of course you haven't seen it before. Otherwise, how can it be called a novelty? Even Madame Dai and Ye Shuang could not understand it after sizing it up for a long time. Gu Yundong gave Bian Han an encouraging look. Bian Han took a deep breath and tugged at his sweaty palms. He took a step forward and said, "Ladies and gentlemen, you must be very curious about this thing. Let me introduce it to everyone. This thing is called a slide. It's specially designed for children between 3 and 6 years old." Bian Han was stunned for a moment when he saw that everyone's gaze was on him. However, he quickly pinched himself and recited the words he had practiced at home hundreds of times. The slide allows children to exercise their physical fitness, increase the balance of their legs, and make their hands and feet more coordinated. It can also allow children to have more courage and confidence by climbing and sliding. Chapter 1160. Envy. Chapter 1160. Envy. Everyone was a little surprised. These euro had such a function? Seeing was better than hearing. Gu Yundong saw everyone's gaze and gave Kiki a look. Kiki immediately pulled Fifth Miss forward. When they reached the stairs, she turned to Fifth Miss and said, "Don't be afraid. Just follow me. It's very fun." Fifth Miss was not afraid at all. She was eager to give it a try and nodded vigorously. Kiki started to walk up the stairs. Fifth Miss immediately followed her obediently. Her mother wanted to pull her, but she couldn't. The two girls entered the mushroom house one after another and sat down. Gu Yundong went forward and adjusted their postures before nodding. Kiki moved her butt and slashed down with a swoosh. Fifth Miss followed closely behind and shouted excitedly, "I'm coming down, I'm coming down. It's so fun." There was a blanket at the bottom of the slide, so she was not afraid of falling and colliding. After the two girls slid down, they immediately turned around and climbed the stairs again. Everyone was speechless. The two of them went to the net again and passed by another windmill house. They rode down on the rotary slide. That was not all. The two of them became more and more excited as they played. When they slid down, they went to climb the ladder or walk the net. They went back and forth a few times, making the other children beside them envious. They revealed longing expressions. The ladies and young girls present actually felt that it was quite interesting, but this slide was too small for them. It was impossible for them to play even if they wanted to. Hence, when Kiki and Fifth Miss tried to climb the ladder for the third time, they were caught by Third Mississippi. She asked excitedly, "Fifth sister, is this slide really that fun? What does it feel like to go up?" It felt a little high when I first walked up. But with Kiki around, I'm not afraid at all. Kiki held my hand and it was very firm. When I went down the slide, I felt like I was flying. It's too interesting. Alright, there's also that net. When I first left, I thought I would fall, but I didn't. After all, the net is small. I'm too big. After saying that, she broke free from Third Miss' hand and ran over again. When the other children heard this, they couldn't take it anymore and wanted to play too. "Mother, I'm not afraid of heights at all. I want to go. I want to go through that net. I'm very big too. I want to slide down. I want to fly." The madams and young ladies present had a headache from the noise, but some were deep in thought. Perhaps it could really improve a child's courage? The height of this slide was indeed average for them, but it was a little high for children. If they could overcome their timidity and have fun, and also solve the noise problem in New Tea Pavilion, wouldn't that be perfect? All of them looked at Gu Yundong. The latter smiled and said, "Of course you can play if you want, but there are 3 rules." The children nodded profusely. Firstly, you have to line up. Come one by one. You can't bully the weak. Secondly, you have to protect your belongings and not sabotage them. Don't kick the slide and cause trouble for others. Thirdly, you have to follow the order. Go up the steps, but don't climb. Be reasonable and don't make a fuss. That was all for now. She would think of other things later. Can you do these 3 things? As soon as Gu Yundong finished speaking, the children present immediately nodded. Yes, yes, yes. Chapter 1161. Salary of 20 taels. Chapter 1161. Salary of 20 taels. Gu Yundong got someone to arrange for them to line up and come one by one. Then, she lifted the other 3 pieces of cloth. Everyone was stunned and looked at the 3 facilities. One was a swing set. They knew this. The other was a small wooden horse. They also knew this. The last Oni Gu Yundong did not say much and let Kiki and Fifth Miss play. The two of them immediately sat on both sides of the seesaw. There were two small stools on both sides, and there was a rail in front for you to hold. After Kiki sat on it, she tapped her toes and flew up. The other children were attracted over, but they also wanted to play with the slide. They looked at this and then at that, their faces filled with anxiety. But these children were still queuing obediently because of what Gu Yundong had said. Soon, people at the swing set and the small wooden horse went up to play, but the most lively thing was still the slide. A madam looked at the lively scene and could not help but say, "My son has always liked to pretend to be an adult. It's rare to see him acting like this now." "That's right. My girl has always been afraid of heights. She doesn't mind now." Presumably, she had been pretending in the past, but when she saw something fun, she revealed her true colors. The children played together. These people were all children from wealthy families. They had been trained in basic etiquette since they were young. Most of them could listen, so it was not difficult to manage them. Aunt Ku was in charge here. She had always liked children and could even tell stories to these little fellows. Gu Yundong saw that there was nothing else for her to do here, so she brought Bien Han and Gu Xiaoxi out. As soon as the two of them arrived at the courtyard, they could not help but feel excited. "I didn't expect it to be so popular. Look at those children. They're having a lot of fun. I think the guests are also very satisfied." Gu Yundong led them to the counter and said, "When this place becomes popular, there might be business. Uncle, you have to be mentally prepared." Bien Han clenched his fists. "Will there really be business? Will they spend money to make such a thing and leave it at home?" "Of course there will. You'll know when the time comes." As they spoke, the three of them stopped in front of the counter. Madame Chiu was already there. When she saw Gu Yundong, she nodded slightly. Then, he took out a money bag from under the counter and pushed it in front of Bien Han. With a businesslike expression he said, "Hey, raise 20 taels of silver. It's the fee for this slide. According to what we agreed on back then, there's still a year to repair it." 20 taels of silver. Was it really 20 taels of silver? Bien Han could be considered to have seen the world now, but earning 20 taels in one go was still a huge sense of accomplishment for him. He nodded quickly. "I'll come over often to see if the slide swing is damaged. Many thanks." Bien Han kept the silver and smiled widely. It had only been half a month, but he had already earned so much. After the payment was settled, Gu Yundong left New Tea Pavilion with the two of them. After getting into the carriage, Bien Han opened the money bag and took out the silver pieces inside. He handed 3 taels of silver to Gu Xiaoxi. "Hey, race your pay." The workers in the prefectural city earned about 3 taels of silver a month. This was the case for Su Chongshun and Zhuangzi in Gu Yundong's shop. Gu Xiaoxi had actually only worked for half a month. However, the estimated working period was a month. The salary had already been discussed, so the money wasn't too much. Chapter 1162. Building a House. Chapter 1162. Building a house. Gu Xiaoxi did not decline. He held the silver happily and even took a big bite. Only then did he laugh out loud. Although he had more than 100 taels of silver on him now, in the end, he did not earn them himself. Now that he had this money in his hand, he felt especially at ease. At the thought of this, he suddenly sighed again. Yundong said that there would be more business coming to my door in the future. I want to help you and you can give me a salary. Unfortunately, I have to transfer the household register to Yongfu village first and build a house. He had wanted to go back previously, but he happened to bump into Bien Han who wanted to do a slide, so he was delayed for half a month. After all, he was going to get married. How could he not have a house? At that time, wouldn't Yaya be wronged? He had money in his hands now. He could build a better one. At the mention of building a house, Gu Yundong could not help but turn to look at Bien Han. "Uncle, do you want to take this opportunity to build your house?" Bien Han wanted to cover it, but he hesitated. Now that they had some money in their hands, they had discussed with Dafeng before that it was best to build a house as soon as possible. Although they were renting a house in the city now, in their opinion they had to have a root in their hometown. Mulan's grave was still in the back mountain of Yongfu village. Yuanji was also staying in the county city to study. In the future, when he returned to his hometown during the New Year and holidays, he could not stay in the Gu family forever. That would be ridiculous. What they were hesitating about was how the house should be built and how big it should be. Who wouldn't want to build a bigger, sturdier, and more imposing house? Especially when they saw the two green brick houses of the Gu and Xiao families, everyone in the village was envious. When Bien Han first saw it, a raging fire burned in the depths of his heart. He secretly swore that he would do the same when he built a house in the future. He had money in his hands now. Although it was not enough, Yundong had been tight on money when she was building the house. He could borrow it and work hard. And yet Bien Han could only think about it in his heart. He did not have Yundong's courage to build such a house after escaping from the famine. He did not have Yundong's ability either. Before the house was built, she had already earned enough money. He thought about building a house that was slightly larger than the one he was renting now. However, he and Gu Dafeng were still hesitating about whether to build a mud house or a brick house. Now that Gu Yundong asked, Bien Han also wanted to hear her opinion. A brick house. Gu Yundong's answer came as no surprise. Bien Han had already guessed it. It was the same for him and Gu Dafeng. Now, Gu Yundong had made up his mind for them. On the other hand, Gu Xiaoxi frowned and asked softly, "Are we going to build a brick house?" In the past, in Gu village, only the chief's house was a brick house. If we build it so well, won't others be jealous? As he spoke, he quickly calculated the money in his heart. He had enough money in his hands, but he still had to save it for the wedding and farming. He had to save it. Bien Han glanced at Gu Xiaoxi, who had his head lowered, with a complicated look in his eyes. Jealous? You're thinking too much. When you see the houses of the Gu family and the Xiao family, you will know that if you are too jealous, you will become numb. After the discussion, Gu Yundong and the rest returned to Yongfu village the next day. Xiao Qingyuan, Gu Xiaoxi, and his wife returned too. Bien Han and Gu Dajiang stayed in the Xuanhe prefecture for the time being. Chapter 1163. Feeling very poor. Chapter 1163. Feeling very poor, they were going to settle down in Yongfu village in the future. Gu Xiaoxi and Xianxia were still a little excited. From the moment they arrived at the entrance of the village, they couldn't help but lift the curtain of the carriage to look outside. This road is really wide. I didn't expect a village's road to be similar to an official road. Gu Xiaoxi sighed. It seems that Yongfu village is much richer than Gu village. Gu Dafeng covered her mouth and laughed. This is all thanks to Yundong. Huh. Gu Xiaoxi was puzzled. Just as she was about to ask, she heard Xianxia's exclamation. There's actually such a magnificent house in the village. Gu Xiaoxi immediately looked in the direction of her finger and widened her eyes in shock. The carriage stopped at that moment. Gu Yundong and the rest alighted, but Gu Xiaoxi was still in a daze. Gu Dafeng walked to the carriage window and reached out to pat his head. All right, come down quickly. We're home. Where are we're home? Gu Xiaoxi hurriedly came down. Then, she watched as Gu Dafeng and the others calmly walked into the spacious and imposing green brick house. His mouth fell open in astonishment. No, it can't be, can it? This is his brother's house? Gu Xiaoxi turned around and exchanged glances with Xianxia, who was also stunned. After a while, he began to worry about his silver. Initially he thought that 100 taels was already a lot, but now, it seemed like he was very poor. Seeing that they did not come in for a long time, Gu Dafeng ran out and pulled the two of them in. As soon as she entered, Gu Xiaoxi realized that this house was even more beautiful and unique than she had imagined. He fell in love with it at first glance. He began to count the money in his hands again. Gu Yundong did not wait for him to finish calculating and went to look for Chen Liang. Chen Liang had been overjoyed recently. The cowpox vaccination in their village had been completed, but Xiao Quan did not leave. He was still holding down the fort in Yongfu village. Therefore, many people from the neighboring villages came to ask for help. Now, Yongfu village was in high demand. It was extremely popular. During this period of time, there were many matchmakers who visited. Some had daughters who wanted to marry into Yongfu village, and some had sons who wanted to marry the daughters of Yongfu village. Chen Liang walked with the wind under his feet, looking exceptionally imposing. And these were all blessings brought about by Gu Yundong and Xiao Qingyuan. Therefore, when he saw Gu Yundong coming to look for him, Chen Liang immediately got Madame Zhou to make tea and send snacks. He smiled and let them sit. He asked happily, Why are you back at the village at this time? Did something happen in the workshop? Then, he looked at Gu Xiaoxi and Xianxia.
These two area euro. They're my uncle and aunt.
Chen Liang was stunned for a moment and was a little uncertain.
Who are they again?
My uncle and aunt, Gu Yundong repeated. Chen Liang's eyes widened. Of course, he knew that the Gu family had been looking for Gu Xiaoxi. To be honest, he had always thought that the youngest uncle of the Gu family might have passed away a long time ago. He did not expect them to really find him. His surprised gaze circled around Gu Xiaoxi twice before he finally suppressed the gossip in his heart and said, "Congratulations, congratulations. Your family is finally reunited."
Yes, our family is reunited.
Gu Yundong sighed. So this time, besides letting my uncle's household register be in Yongfu village, we also want to build my uncle and aunt's house. This is a good thing. Chen Liang clapped his hands happily. After a pause, he seemed to have thought of something and asked, "Or do you want your Uncle Feng to build it?" Chapter 1164. Budget for the house. Gu Yundong shook his head. Uncle Feng is very busy now. He has a few major businesses on hand that he has to personally keep an eye on, so I didn't look for him. Feng Danning had always been grateful to Gu Yundong. If the Gu family wanted to build a house, he would come personally without a word. It was Gu Yundong who stopped him. He had finally stabilized his footing in the prefectural city and happened to have an urgent job in his hands. He had agreed with his boss that he would do it personally and had a completion date. If he ignored it at this juncture, his good reputation would be ruined. Therefore, Gu Yundong found his disciple, Xiao Gao. Xiao Gao had always followed Feng Danning and did not leave when he was down and out. He was a very patient and meticulous person. He was also diligent in his work. Gu Yundong was relieved. As for the renovation of the shop in the capital that Aunt Ku had mentioned to Gu Yundong, she had also looked for Feng Danning. Feng Danning thought about it for a long time and rejected it. Even though he knew that this was a very rare opportunity given to him by Gu Yundong, even though he also wanted to go up, he was very clear about his ability. If he walked too quickly, it would be easy for him to fall down. It was better to build a solid foundation in the prefectural city before developing to the surroundings. Didn't everybody see that Gu Yundong's shop was only open in the prefectural city and not in the capital? It was not that she had no money or ability, but it was just not time yet. The new tea pavilion business only dared to take down the shop because of Madame Dai and Ye Shuang. They had connections in the capital. Therefore, they were still discussing finding suitable craftsmen for the renovation of new tea pavilion in the capital. Chen Liang nodded when he heard what she meant. Xiao Gao is an expert too. He knows how to be grateful. He could have finished his apprenticeship long ago. He has always been by Daning's side. It won't be a problem to hand him over. Gu Yundong nodded and told Chen Liang the start date. Then, she bid farewell to Madame Zhou and returned to the Gu residence. The next day, the news that the Gu family was going to build a house spread. At this moment, farming had begun. Many people were busy, but anyone who had some free time would come and help. Gu Xiaoxi and Bian Han's house was at the foot of the mountain. Gu Yundong had bought the land in their name. The land at the foot of the mountain became extremely hot because of the newly built road. Recently, a few families had already built houses nearby. There were too many people living in the original houses, so they chose this place after splitting up. Gu Xiaoxi and Bian Han had taken a closer look at the location and were thinking about the shape of the house. After learning that the Gu family's brick house was designed and painted by Gu Yundong, Gu Xiaoxi took a brush and paper and stuffed them into her hands without hesitation. "Help me draw one too. I don't need one as big as yours. Just a smaller one." He tried his best to restrain his gaze from looking at the green brick house in front of him, lest he lost control and wanted to build it bigger. Gu Yundong was amused by his bitter expression. "All right, then tell me first. How much do you plan to spend on building this house?" Gu Xiaoxi counted with his fingers and gritted his teeth. 30 to 40 taels. At most, it won't exceed 40 taels. Gu Yundong knew what to do. "All right, I'll draw it for you." Bian Han's budget was originally not as high as Gu Xiaoxi's. He did not have more than 100 taels of silver in his hands. However, there was still a fire burning in his heart. Hence, he gritted his teeth and planned to build a house like Gu Xiaoxi's. Gu Yundong nodded and began to draw. However, the next day, Bien Han returned to Xianxia Prefecture. Chapter 1165. Why is Tao Yan here? Gu Yundong was right. The Xianxia Prefecture had indeed found Bien Han for business. Although it was not a slide, but just 2 small wooden horses, it was still a good start. Hence, the construction of the house was left to Gu Xiaoxi. Gu Xiaoxi was in high spirits every day. He discussed with Xiao Gao how to build the house every day as if he was very experienced. After Gu Yundong finished drawing the structure of the house, she did not interfere much. On the other hand, Xiao Qingyuan helped Gu Xiaoxi pull the bricks and tiles very skillfully. Seeing that the house was being built bit by bit, Gu Yundong began to ponder about the expansion of the Gu family's workshop. The workshop was still too small. Although it was not a problem to supply the 2 shops in the county and prefectural city, that was only under the circumstances of limited purchasing. Prefecture Magistrate Dai had told her last time that the limited purchase of white sugar had already caused many families in the prefectural city to be dissatisfied. It would not be good for her if this continued. Therefore, Gu Yundong planned to increase the production volume. Then, the workshop would have to expand again. When Xiao Qingyuan pulled the last cart of bricks back, he saw Gu Yundong standing at the entrance of the workshop with a thoughtful expression. What is it? Gu Yundong stroked her chin and told him about her plan to expand the workshop. Xiao Qingyuan paused and said, Why don't we build another workshop and separate the white sugar from the sweets and canned fruits? Build another one? Gu Yundong thought of how messy the sugar area was and suddenly felt that it was necessary. All right, after eldest aunt and uncle's house is built, we'll get Xiao Gao to continue building the workshop. There was no need to find another place. They could just build another house beside the Gu family's workshop. The 2 of them discussed the matters of the workshop. Just as they were talking excitedly, a familiar voice suddenly came from behind. Gu Yundong turned around and saw Lu Wei getting off the horse excitedly. However, what surprised her was that there was someone behind him. It was actually a Euro Tao Yan? Gu Yundong could not help but look at Xiao Qingyuan. Why is Tao Yan here? As he spoke, Lu Wei had already walked in front of the 2 of them. You guys have been back from the prefectural city for more than half a month and didn't even tell me. If I hadn't happened to come to your shop to buy things, I wouldn't have known. As he spoke, he looked behind them for a while. By the way, I heard that your uncle has been found too? Where is he? Gu Yundong was speechless. Why would you want to see my uncle? You don't even know him. I'm just curious. Gu Yundong ignored him and looked behind him. Tao Yan led his horse over and cupped his hands at the 2 of them. Young Master Xiao, Miss Gu, sorry to disturb you. Third Young Master Tao, what brings you to Yongfu village? Tao Yan smiled and said, I'm here to look for Miss Gu. Coincidentally, young Master Lu was also coming over, so we traveled together. Xiao Qingyuan frowned. Looking for me? Gu Yundong was surprised. She felt that she should not have any interaction with Tao Yan. Even so, Gu Yundong still brought the 2 of them back to the Gu house. After they were served tea, Gu Yundong asked, Third Young Master Tao, why are you looking for me? I remember the last time at Jianghu restaurant, Miss Gu took out a handkerchief and showed it to young Master Peng. You even asked about the origin of the handkerchief, right? Gu Yundong's expression tightened when she heard the handkerchief. She clenched her fists by her side. She nodded and asked, Yes, why did Third Young Master Tao suddenly ask about the handkerchief? Chapter 1166. How lustful Tao Yan smiled and said, Back then, I saw that the handkerchief was indeed quite extraordinary, so I also took a few more glances. Especially when I heard young Master Peng say that the material of the handkerchief was rare, I subconsciously paid more attention when I saw it again. Xiao Qingyuan narrowed his eyes. Again? Have you seen that material again? Tao Yan looked up and glanced at Xiao Qingyuan. As expected, Gu Yundong did not unintentionally obtain the handkerchief. It should be special to them. Moreover, he had noticed the word Xiao on the handkerchief at that time, as in Xiao Qingyuan. However, looking at their expressions, Tao Yan realized that they were not completely secretive about this matter. That was right. If it was very private and they did not let anyone know, she wouldn't have asked Peng Zhongfei about the handkerchief in front of him. He sighed inwardly and said, Yes, I've seen it again. He did not wait for Gu Yundong to ask again. This time, his answer was very straightforward. A few days ago, I followed eldest brother to Jianghu Prefecture for a business deal. The other party had a friend with him. The pouch hanging at his waist was made of this kind of fabric. At that time, I took a few more glances and thought that Miss Gu seemed to be very interested in this material, so I asked a few more questions. That person was a talkative person and really told me a lot about the material. Previously, young Master Peng said that cloth was rare, and that was indeed the case. However, he was wrong about one thing. Ordinary people really don't have this material. Even if they do, they don't dare to use it. Therefore, those who can use it are all high-ranking officials and nobles. This has only happened in the past few years. If it was 10 years ago, there would be even fewer people who would use it. Gu Yundong's eyes sparkled. Few people used it 10 years ago? Brother Xiao's handkerchief was from 20 years ago, so fewer people must have used it. Their range could be narrowed down again and again. Xiao Qingyuan, on the other hand, was very calm. He took a sip of tea and said to Tao Yan, "That person knows what happened 10 years ago?" "Yes, that person's status in the capital is not ordinary. It's said that 20 years ago, their Xiao family was one of the top families in the capital. They had once made a great contribution and received a reward from the previous emperor. This cloth was among the rewards." Gu Yundong was stunned. The Xiao family? She glanced at Xiao Qingyuan and smiled. They have the same surname as Brother Xiao. Yeah, that is the Marquis of Huayin Estate. The old Marquis back then was a famous figure. Marquis Huayin, surnamed Xiao, had obtained such fabric 20 years ago. Gu Yundong was slightly excited. Could it be that Brother Xiao's identity was about to be revealed? She looked at Xiao Qingyuan, and the meaning in her eyes could be seen at a glance. Gu Yundong thought that he would be as impatient as her. Unexpectedly, Xiao Qingyuan said firmly, "Let's get married first." "But the wedding is at the end of August." "Get married first." Gu Yundong was speechless. All right, after the wedding, it seemed that she had to make a trip to the capital. However, she did not know if this Marquis Huayin was related to Big Brother Xiao. She wanted to ask more about Marquis Huayin, but she didn't expect Lu Wei to suddenly exclaim, "Wait, wait, wait. What did I just hear? Did I hear something?" Gu Yundong was almost frightened by him. What did he hear? Did he have to be so thrilled? However, Lu Wei suddenly grabbed Gu Yundong's shoulders. Xiao Qingyuan narrowed his eyes and quickly separated them, allowing Lu Wei to grab his shoulders. Lu Wei didn't care about this. It didn't matter who he caught. As if provoked, he shook Xiao Qingyuan twice. "What kind of words did you say just now? Repeat what you said just now." Chapter 1167. This is related to me? Xiao Qingyuan pushed Lu Wei's face away. No matter how excited he was, he couldn't spout nonsense, right? Calm down. What did we say? Lu Wei almost screamed. You said you were getting married. You said you were getting married at the end of August, right? Yes, a euro. Why didn't you tell me such an important thing? Gu Yundong's mouth twitched. Wasn't there still some time before the end of August? Did she need to tell him so early? But seeing how agitated he was, Gu Yundong felt that it was better not to provoke him. It was Xiao Qingyuan who sneered and looked like he wanted to settle the score. Did you inform us that you were engaged? Lu Wei was speechless. He immediately felt that he was in the wrong and let go of Xiao Qingyuan's shoulder guiltily. He took a step back and said softly, "It's going to be cancelled soon, all right?" This time, it was Tao Yan's turn to be surprised. When did you get engaged? Why didn't we hear anything about it? Are you breaking off the engagement now? Lu Wei suddenly came back to his senses. He pulled Tao Yan up and pushed him out of the door. Why are you so nosy? Go out, go out. Don't listen to what you shouldn't. Just like that, Tao Yan was pushed out of the door. Lu Wei closed the door in front of him without hesitation. Tao Yan, a euro, Xiao Qingyuan pulled Lu Wei back and opened the door again. He said to Tao Yan, "Let's go to my house for a cup of tea." Tao Yan also knew that it wasn't easy to ask about Lu Wei. He didn't really want to know anything. He was just a little euro curious. Now that Xiao Qingyuan had given him a way out, he naturally followed suit. The two of them turned around and left. Gu Yundong raised his eyebrows and looked at Lu Wei. He said, "Last time, your father said that he wanted to investigate the Zhang family. Have you finished your investigation?" Lu Wei nodded. When he talked about this, He was still a little indignant. You don't know this, but that Zhang family is too despicable. I'm afraid that it'll dirty your ears if I say it. Although he said that, he still explained everything about the Zhang family in detail. Gu Yundong, euro my ears. However, after hearing Lu Wei's words, she was really shocked. It was simply an eye-opener. She did not expect the Zhang siblings to be able to play like this. My father was so angry that he was sick for a few days. If my sister hadn't stopped me, I would have gone to the Zhang family to beat them to death. Gu Yundong glanced at him from the corner of his eye. Fortunately, your sister stopped you. But since the matter has been investigated, why hasn't the marriage been cancelled? Of course my father wants to withdraw, but how can things be so simple? Although the Zhang family is in the wrong in this matter, there's no evidence at all from the things my father investigated. Even if we expose it to the Zhang family won't admit it. Instead they will accuse us. Gu Yundong frowned. Since your father has found out, how can there be no evidence? Zhang Hao's wife told my father about these things. His wife couldn't possibly testify for us, so the matter was tied up. After a pause, Lu Wei continued. Actually, my father also beat around the bush and hinted to old Master Zhang that our family wanted to break off the engagement, but old Master Zhang was simply hateful. He actually threatened us openly and secretly, and as Lu Wei spoke. He stopped and stole a glance at her. Gu Yundong narrowed his eyes. Why? Does this matter have something to do with me? Chapter 1168. I have an affair with you. Lu Wei sighed and sat on a chair at the side, feeling a little dejected. He said weakly, It's all my fault. If I hadn't said in front of Zhang Jiao that you were better than her in everything and wanted to anger her to death, she wouldn't have hated you. My father said that if we took the initiative to break off the engagement, he would have to suspect that I was having an affair with you. His father did not tell old Master Zhang that he already knew about Zhang Jiao's scandal. He did not want the Zhang family to really use despicable methods to slander him and Gu Yundong. Zhang Jiao's notoriety could spread far and wide. But why should Gu Yundong be dragged down? Wouldn't he be at a disadvantage? Gu Yundong, therefore, she really wanted to smash Lu Wei's head. It was fine if he used her as a shield for no reason, but he had to say such things to provoke Zhang Jiao, who was abnormal to begin with. Even if he was telling the truth, shouldn't he be more tactful? So, Uncle Lu didn't want this matter to involve me, so he couldn't cancel the engagement? Lu Wei nodded, but quickly said, But don't worry, my father is thinking of ways to get evidence. He definitely won't let you get into trouble. Gu Yundong did not know what to say. She was not afraid of the Zhang family slandering her, and these things could be explained. However, she would still be plagued by trouble. Old Master Lu was thinking for her and did not want her to get involved in the Lu and Zhang family's matters. That was why he delayed the disengagement. It was just that the Zhang family was too disgusting. It seemed that they had to cling to the Lu residents. It did not matter even if they became enemies. Huh? Gu Yundong suddenly narrowed her eyes. The marriage between the two families would definitely be a good thing. Why did old Master Zhang seem to be clinging to the Lu residents? Gu Yundong reminded Lu Wei, Ask your father to investigate the Zhang family again. I have a feeling that they are hiding some secrets. Yes. Lu Wei nodded. He stood up, as if his fighting spirit had been reignited. Of course, they had to continue investigating and find evidence to break off the engagement. However, after talking about the Zhang family, Lu Wei asked about her wedding with Xiao Qingyuan. Knowing that it was the end of August, he immediately began to think about what to wear that day. As Xiao Qingyuan's best brother, he would definitely come to welcome the bride on the day of the wedding. He was even thinking about how to deal with the bride when she made things difficult for him. Or should he build a good relationship with Gu Yundong's brother in advance? By the way, wasn't her brother Gu Yunshu? He was studying in the same school as Lu Yi. He wanted Lu Yi to be a spy and find out if Gu Yunshu had any strange ideas to make things difficult for them. His thoughts were wandering. When Tao Yan came back with Xiao Qingyuan, he finally looked serious. Tao Yan glanced at him and didn't say anything. The two of them did not stay in the Gu house for long. Lu Wei came over to tell Gu Yundong about the Zhang family. After dinner, Lu Wei saw Gu Xiaoxi and finally left in satisfaction. Just as they left, Gu Xiaoxi was about to talk about the progress of building the house. Unexpectedly, just as he opened his mouth, Gu Yundong pulled Xiao Qingyuan into the house with a serious expression. Gu Xiaoxi was speechless. Can't you see that I'm an adult?
He went to look for his wife resentfully. At this moment, Gu Yundong asked Xiao Qingyuan in a low voice. What did you say to Tao Yan?
Did he say why he specially came over to tell us about the fabric? Chapter 1169. Who did you like? Gu Yundong admitted that he had no friendship with Tao Yan. They had only met once the last time.
He had paid attention to the fabric for no reason, and had even specially made a trip to Yongfu village to tell them that Gu Yundong did not believe that he was just bored.
Xiao Qingyuan was the same. He had indeed tested Tao Yan. Tao Yan's answer was very interesting. He said that he admires our abilities and wants to build a good relationship with us and make friends. Gu Yundong raised her eyebrows. Make friends? He clearly knows that we don't get along with the Tao family. I won my shop in the county city from the Tao family. Is he making friends? He wants us to owe him a favor. Yes. Xiao Qingyuan nodded. From his words, I guess the Tao family situation is a little tense now. Tao Yan had been brought back by Tao Feng for a period of time. With old Master Tao and old Madame Tao's hatred for him, his life in the Tao family would probably not be easy. Especially after hearing that the Tao family's recent businesses were not very good, and their profits were also declining. As such, old Master Tao believed that Tao Yan was the Tao family's nemesis. If he could not suppress Tao Yan and make him unable to raise his head, the Tao family would be finished sooner or later. The Tao family would also be very dissatisfied with Tao Feng. Some time ago, Tao Feng was in charge of most of the Tao family's business. Now it was back in Tao Xing's hands. The Tao family was now completely divided into two factions. One group consisted of Tao Feng and Tao Yan, while the other group consisted of Master Tao and the others. If the Tao Feng brothers wanted to live a good life, they had to be in charge. The reason why Tao Yan wanted to befriend Gu Yundong was not necessarily because of Gu Yundong's ability, but because of the relationship between Gu Yundong and Qin Wenjing. When Tao Feng found Tao Yan back then, Qin Wenjing was a secret helper. Tao Feng should have known Qin Wenzheng's identity. So they want to seize power and destroy Master Tao, but they actually want to borrow Qin Wenzheng's hand? That's the gist of Tao Yan's words. Gu Yundong touched her chin and sat on the chair. Xiao Qingyuan poured her a glass of water and said, but the Tao family is involved in other matters now. Qin Wenjing clearly knows that there's something wrong with them, but he hasn't acted yet. I'm afraid it's not time yet. Gu Yundong sighed. So not only can we not become Tao Yan's helpers, but we also have to make sure that Tao Yan and Master Tao are not allowed to touch them? Why did she feel so uncomfortable? Xiao Qingyuan nodded, but he changed his mind and said, perhaps we can ask Qin Wenjing for his opinion. Xiao Qingyuan felt that Qin Wenjing had not moved, perhaps because there was no movement from the Tao family. Perhaps he could alert the enemy. Gu Yundong obviously had the same thoughts as him. He looked up and the two of them looked at each other. They seemed to have a tacit understanding. At the thought of this, Xiao Qingyuan's eyebrows moved. He couldn't help but lower his head and kiss her. He really hoped that the end of August would come sooner so that he wouldn't have to be so sneaky. Just as he was thinking about it, he suddenly heard messy footsteps outside. Immediately after, there was a knock on the door, followed by Gu Xiaoxi's panicked voice. Yundong, something bad has happened. Gu Yundong suddenly came back to her senses. She stood up and pushed Xiao Qingyuan out. A trace of frustration flashed across the latter's heart. With an unfriendly expression, he went over and opened the door. Outside the door stood Gu Xiaoxi, whose face was covered in sweat. Chapter 1170. Pregnant Xiao Qingyuan frowned. What happened? Gu Xiaoxi looked like he was about to cry. Yaya. Yaya suddenly vomited. Then her face turned pale and she fainted. When Gu Yundong heard this, she hurriedly got up and walked out. Why did she faint? Gu Xiaoxi shook his head. I don't know. At first, I thought she ate something bad, but why would she faint? As he spoke, he turned around and led the two of them quickly to his room. When they entered the house, they realized that Chong Yaya was indeed lying on the bed with a pale face. Beside her was Shan Sitian, who had also heard the commotion and came over. She held a towel in her hand and was wiping the corners of Chong Yaya's mouth. Seeing Xiao Qingyuan coming over, She quickly took 2 steps back to make room for him. Xiao Qingyuan was now half a doctor. He could treat ordinary symptoms or take pulses. After all, he had stayed with more than 100 doctors in the Million Gold Pavilion for a few months. He did not forget anything he needed to learn. He sat on the stool by the bed and reached out to take Xiangxia's pulse. Gu Xiaoxi watched worriedly from the side. She was so nervous that her hands were intertwined. After a while, Xiao Qingyuan retracted his hand and frowned in deep thought. "How is it?" Gu Xiaoxi asked nervously. "Is there something wrong with her body? Yaya has suffered a lot in the past and her health has always been bad. Is it now?" Xiao Qingyuan didn't say anything and reached out to take her pulse again. Gu Yundong hurriedly held Gu Xiaoxi back and told her not to speak. The room was silent except for the shallow breathing of the few of them. It was only when Xiao Qingyuan retracted his hand that the 3 of them looked at him steadily. "She should be pregnant," Xiao Qingyuan said. He was actually a little uncertain. It seemed that she hadn't been pregnant for long, and the baby's pulse was faint. The 3 people in the room were speechless. What did they just hear? Xianxia was pregnant. Gu Xiaoxi was stunned. His entire body froze as he stood there motionlessly. When Gu Yundong finally reacted, he suddenly pushed him and said happily, "Uncle, are you stupid? Brother Xiao just said that auntie is pregnant." Gu Xiaoxi turned his head around in a daze and blinked. So I didn't hear wrongly just now? I'm going to be a father? My wife is pregnant?" "Yes." Shen Sitian smiled. "Congratulations." The corners of Gu Xiaoxi's mouth were wide open as he suddenly rushed to the bed. Yaya, you." He stopped mid-sentence and turned to ask Xiao Qingyuan worriedly. "But why did Yaya faint? She even fainted when she was pregnant. Will she be all right? When will she wake up?" "It's fine. She'll wake up soon. She fainted because her body was weak to begin with, and she didn't receive good care because of the cold. She was too tired from building the house these few days, so she fainted." Only then did Gu Xiaoxi relax. Xiao Qingyuan thought for a moment and said, "But she hasn't been pregnant for long. It's better for you to take her to the county city's medical center and find an experienced doctor to take a look and confirm it." Xiao Qingyuan didn't know much about gynecology. However, it seemed that he had to pay more attention to this aspect in the future so that Yundong could receive better care in the future. It was unknown if Gu Xiaoxi had heard Xiao Qingyuan's words, but he just nodded vigorously and looked at Xianxia carefully. Then he looked at her belly and smiled foolishly. Chapter 1171. Something forgotten. Gu Yundong secretly shook her head and heaved a sigh of relief. "Uncle, take good care of little aunt first. Nourish her well later. Don't let her go to the new house for the time being." Gu Xiaoxi kept nodding. Gu Yundong thought that she should wait for Xianxia to wake up first. The 3 of them left him to take care of her and turned to leave the room. As soon as they walked out of the door, she saw Tong Shui Tao walking over with a child in her arms. This child was the son that Madame Jiang had given birth to not long ago. Now that he was almost 2 months old, he was especially obedient. Usually, he did not cry or make a fuss. He only cried when he was hungry. Gu Yundong walked over and held his little hand. The little guy immediately grinned, revealing his pink gums. He was very happy, making her feel happy. Gu Yundong looked up and said to Tong Shui Tao, "It just so happens that your mother has just given birth. There are some things pregnant women need to pay attention to. Let aunt ask her." Gu Yundong really did not know what pregnant women should pay attention to, but Madame Jiang had 2 children and was very experienced. However, Xiangxia's health was indeed not good. Not only could she not overwork herself, but she also needed to eat something good. As she thought about it, she walked to the study and took a brush and paper to record it down. She planned to buy something in the county city another day. Just as she finished writing, she heard Xianxia wake up. Gu Yundong looked over and saw Xianxia and Gu Xiaoxi hugging each other and crying tears of joy. Xianxia felt an unprecedented joy well up in her heart. When she was young, she was despised by her biological grandmother. After her reputation was completely ruined, she thought that she might be alone in the future and it would be impossible for her to get married again. Unexpectedly, a calamity had caused her to meet Gu Xiaoxi. It was a blessing in disguise that she had found such a husband who doted on her. The Gu family was even easier to get along with. They were afraid that she would have no relatives by her side alone, so they took special care of her. She was about to have her own house and home. Initially, they thought that they couldn't be happier. They did not expect their child to arrive so quickly. Xianxia felt that if all the hardships she had suffered in the past 16 years could be exchanged for her current happy life, it would be worth it. Xiao Qingyuan endured it and said, "She's pregnant. It's best not to have too many emotional fluctuations. She just needs to cry." Gu Xiaoxi came back to her senses and quickly let go of Xianxia to wipe her tears. Yes. Don't cry anymore. This is a good thing. You're not in good health to begin with. I'll brew some pregnancy-stabilizing medicine for you later. You have to drink it obediently. Don't go to the new house. With me around, there will definitely be no problem. Xianxia nodded obediently. Gu Xiaoxi touched her stomach and became excited again. All right, I have to send a letter to my eldest sister and second brother. They'll definitely be very happy. They might even return to Yongfu village. Gu Yundong thought that eldest Aunt Gu would be back, but his father would be late. Still, looking at the silly Gu Xiaoxi, Gu Yundong could only remind him, "Uncle, have you forgotten something else?" Gu Xiaoxi was stunned. Forgotten something? He lowered his head and thought about it. He told Xianxia to have a good rest and recuperate well. He told his eldest sister and second brother the good news and reminded himself to spend more time with his wife. Later, he had to ask Qingyuan what she should eat and ask the Jiang family about other things he needed to pay attention to. Other than these few points, what else was there? He raised his head and looked at Gu Yundong in a daze. Chapter 1172. Celebration. Gu Yundong sniggered in her heart. "So you're stupid now that your wife is pregnant?" She sighed and said, "It's your wedding." Gu Xiaoxi and Xianxia were stunned at the same time, and the smiles on their faces instantly disappeared. Wedding? Yes. Wedding. Since Xianxia was pregnant, she could not wait until the end of August to hold the banquet. Although they had already signed the marriage contract and were officially husband and wife, in the eyes of others, the marriage contract did not count at all. They had to hold the wedding banquet before they could be considered married. If she waited until the end of August and Xianxia's belly became big, who knew how much gossip she would suffer? It would not be a big problem if they were to hold a banquet now and wait for the child to be born. Gu Xiaoxi couldn't care less anymore and hurriedly nodded. Then let's hold the wedding first. Independent Illinois choose a good day this month. As he spoke, he stood up and squatted back down halfway. But I haven't prepared anything. The wedding dress is still. He looked like he was at a loss. Xianxia grabbed his hand and smiled gently. It's okay. We don't know many people here to begin with. We can just set up 2 or 3 tables. There's still time for the wedding dress. I'm actually already halfway done. Xianxia knew how to do needlework. Although she was not as good as Shen Sitian, she had made the wedding dress herself. From the first day she decided to set up the wine, she had already started sewing happily. Gu Xiaoxi nodded repeatedly. He would agree to anything she said. Gu Yundong saw that they were discussing, so there was not much of a problem. Next, it was time to decide on the date of their wedding. It was not far away. Half a month later, Gu Yundong wrote a letter and asked Chen Jinbao and the others to bring it to the prefectural city for eldest aunt and her parents. As expected, the next day, Gu Dafeng carried her luggage and rushed back with the delivery team. It wouldn't be too late for Gu Dejiang to come back a few days before their wedding. As soon as Gu Dafeng arrived, she instructed Gu Xiaoxi, "Get Xiao Gao and the rest to build your room first. This house is already more than halfway up. In the next half a month, they'll specially build your room. You'll definitely be able to live there before you get married." The wedding had to be held in their own house. If it was in the Gu family, it would be terrible. Originally, Gu Xiaoxi and Gu Dafeng's houses were built together. Both families were already halfway up. In this day and age, there was no such thing as formaldehyde. After drying it for 2 days, one could live there. It was already May and June, and the sun was already very strong. It was not a big problem. However, Xianxia was pregnant, so it was naturally better for her to stay in the Gu family. They would only stay in their new house for a while on the day of the wedding. Gu Xiaoxi immediately agreed. He turned around and started building the house with Xiao Gao. With more than 10 people working together, and because the house was not very big, the beam would be installed in a few days. After 2 days of drying, it was time to decorate the new house. It just so happened that Xianxia's health had improved a little, so she planned to go to the county city with Gu Yundong to buy things. After all, she was getting married. There were some things that she needed to take a look at herself. Gu Yundong brought her and Gu Dafeng to the county city. She and Xianxia did not know much, and many things were handled by Gu Dafeng. It was just that when she bought stuff, she would ask for their opinions and see which one they liked. After walking around for half a circle, Gu Yundong was worried that Xianxia would be tired, so she wanted to find a tea house to rest. Unexpectedly, just as she got Gu Dafeng and Xianxia into the carriage, she saw a familiar figure from the corner of her eye. Chapter 1173. Affair? Gu Yundong narrowed her eyes and said to Tong Shui Tao, "Take my eldest aunt and little aunt to the tea house to rest first. Order something to eat. I'll be back soon." As she spoke, she quietly followed the figure. When Gu Dafeng and Xianxia stuck their heads out, they only had time to see her back. Gu Yundong saw Zhang Jiao. In the past, she would not have cared about Zhang Jiao's appearance. However, the Zhang family wanted to slander her if their marriage was cancelled. She felt disgusted, so she decided to let her and Lu Wei break off the engagement as soon as possible. Gu Yundong didn't know where Zhang Jiao was going. She didn't even bring a maid with her. Gu Yundong raised her eyebrows. If she did something shameful, Lu Wei might have evidence to break off the engagement with the Lu family. She was a little excited just thinking about it. Gu Yundong followed Zhang Jiao silently, her heart pounding. Zhang Jiao did not notice anything amiss. She was very calm except for the fact that she did not have a maidservant with her. Not long after, Zhang Jiao stopped and walked into a restaurant. Gu Yundong looked up. Wasn't this Jianghu restaurant? As soon as Zhang Jiao entered, Gu Yundong followed. The manager of the restaurant was especially familiar with her. When he saw her coming, he immediately wanted to greet her. Gu Yundong raised her hand and pressed it gently. The shopkeeper immediately understood and asked in a low voice, "Miss Gu, are you here for something?" "Where did that lady go?" Gu Yundong looked around but did not see Zhang Jiao. She was probably not in the lobby downstairs. As expected, the shopkeeper pointed upstairs and said, "In room 2. Room 2. What a pity. It's not the wing where I could have overheard the conversation last time." Gu Yundong sighed inwardly. She looked upstairs and continued to ask the shopkeeper, "Was there someone in that room?" "Yes, young Master Zhang is also inside." Gu Yundong's expression changed slightly. Zhang Hao was also here? All right, they had an affair and came to her fiancé's restaurant. Wasn't he too disrespectful? He was simply detestable. When the shopkeeper saw her unfriendly expression, he felt uneasy and asked softly, "Miss Gu, is there a problem?" Gu Yundong waved his hand. "No, I'll go up and take a look." The shopkeeper wanted to say something but hesitated. From Lady Gu's expression, tone, and actions, could it be that she wanted to eavesdrop on others again? Sigh, how could a good girl have such a fetish? He had to find an opportunity to talk to the boss and ask him to persuade Miss Gu. Otherwise, if she developed the habit of eavesdropping on others at the Jianghu restaurant in the future, their business would be ruined. However, Gu Yundong had already gone upstairs and was standing at the staircase. She frowned as she looked at the second room. What should she do? She did not know what was going on inside. It would be great if they could hug each other and do something indecent. That way, they would be caught red-handed. Gu Yundong took 2 steps at the staircase. When she saw the waiter serve the food, she almost reached out to stop him. However, on second thought, Zhang Hao and his sister had seen her before. Even if she disguised herself as a waiter, she would be recognized immediately. If she couldn't go in, she couldn't play the recording pen. Therefore, she could only watch as the waiter pushed open the door of the room. After bringing the food in, he came out, closed the door, and went downstairs. But just now, when Gu Yundong looked into the room, she did not see anything unusual about their actions. Chapter 1174. Very strange siblings. Gu Yundong secretly felt that it was a pity. She frowned and was at a loss. However, just as she was about to climb up to the roof to eavesdrop, the door to the second room actually opened. Gu Yundong immediately turned around and quickly hid behind a pillar. Sure enough, Zhang Hao and Zhang Jiao came out at the same time. Zhang Jiao said proudly, "Brother, don't think that treating me to a meal is enough as an apology." All right, Alright. When we get back, I'll give you another gift, alright? Zhang Jiao snorted. That's more like it. As they spoke, they went downstairs one after another. Gu Yundong narrowed her eyes. She had not noticed it last time. Now that she knew that they had that kind of relationship, looking at their actions, they were really not as simple as being siblings. Their actions were more flirtatious. The problem was, if they were intimate, so be it. Why did they have to come to Xianxia restaurant? Who were they trying to annoy? After watching the siblings leave the restaurant, Gu Yundong hesitated for a moment before entering room number 2. The moment she entered, the first thing she saw was the table of dishes. That's right. They came out not long after the dishes were served. That was strange. What was the point of ordering food and not eating it? Could it be that they came to the restaurant to talk? But in such a short period of time, they could not say much. It was very strange. Very strange. Gu Yundong glanced at the dishes on the table but could not see anything. She then looked around the entire room and felt that there was nothing unusual. It was a very ordinary room. Gu Yundong was observing when footsteps suddenly came from outside. She subconsciously wanted to hide, but after looking around, she couldn't find a place to hide. In the end, she bent down and went under the table, flipping the tablecloth down. As soon as she put it down, she spat at herself in frustration. Why was she hiding? It was impossible for the Zhang siblings to be back. What was there to be afraid of? Sure enough, the footsteps quickly entered the door. Immediately after, the waiter's suspicious voice sounded. They didn't eat much on this table. What a waste. Before he could finish speaking, another waiter seemed to come in and said with a smile, "It doesn't matter. It's better if they don't eat it. Let us eat it. Look at this chicken. It hasn't been touched at all. It was personally cooked by the master. Let's split it half each. We can bring it home at night and heat it up for the family at home to try." That's true. Gu Yundong hid under the table. Should she go out or not? It seemed very awkward to go out. The two young men had just discussed bringing the leftovers home, but they did not expect her to hear them. And how could she, Gu Yundong, who was beautiful and intelligent and had the demeanor of a big sister in front of Lu Wei, be seen under the table? If Lu Wei found out, wouldn't he laugh at her? At the thought of this, Gu Yundong calmly squatted under the table. She planned to come out after the two of them packed up and left. The two of them were very fast. Each of them carried out a tray. Gu Yundong heaved a sigh of relief. Just as they were about to come out of the door, a voice came from the door again. "Bring me a pot of tea." The person outside the door seemed to want to enter this room and was standing at the door talking to the waiter who went out. The waiter nodded hurriedly. "Please wait a moment. I'll change the tablecloth and serve tea for you later." Gu Yundong's heart skipped a beat. Damn it, you still want to change the tablecloth? Wouldn't she be exposed? Chapter 1175. Problem. Gu Yundong was anxious. Unexpectedly the next moment, she heard the customer say, "No need to change. I'm thirsty. Hurry up and serve me a pot of tea." Gu Yundong was silent for a moment. Very good. I like this idea, but it's a little sloppy. However, why did this voice sound so familiar? Gu Yundong wanted to lift the tablecloth and look outside, but that person had already entered. He sat on the stool. Gu Yundong lowered her head and could only see his feet. The waiter outside the door left in a hurry. Not long after, he came in with a pot of tea. "Sir, your tea. What would you like to order?" That person waved his hand. "I'm waiting for someone. It won't be too late to order when my friend arrives." "All right, take your time. If you need anything, just let me know." "Okay, you can leave." The waiter left and the door closed. Only Gu Yundong and the customer were left in the huge room. Gu Yundong's legs were a little numb from squatting. She wanted to move but did not dare to. However, her mind was racing. Who was this person? The voice was really familiar. She must have heard it before. Before she could figure it out, this person suddenly put down his teacup, stood up, and walked to the side. Gu Yundong immediately held her breath. That person seemed to have walked to the door and was leaning against it to listen to the commotion outside. Then, he gently locked the door. With a click, Gu Yundong suddenly tensed up. What was this person trying to do? Just as she was thinking this, she saw that person walk to the table again. After drinking a glass of water, He turned around again. Gu Yundong could only see his feet and determine if his back was facing her. Soon, the pair of feet walked to the wall.
From the direction of the shoes, the man was facing away from him.
She didn't know what he was doing, but he started rustling against the wall. Gu Yundong endured it and finally lifted the tablecloth gently to look at that person. Gu Yundong only saw a back view, but she did not recognize who it was. However, she saw this person's actions clearly. He actually flipped over a calligraphy painting hanging on the wall and gently scraped it with a dagger. Gu Yundong narrowed her eyes. Was there something wrong with that calligraphy painting?
However, right after that, she saw a slender piece of paper fall to the ground lightly.
That person bent down. Gu Yundong was shocked. She quickly flipped the tablecloth over and quickly took out a mask from her space to cover herself.
She stared at the tablecloth warily.
Fortunately, that person did not notice her movements.
He quickly picked up the note on the ground and walked to the table to read it.
Gu Yundong did not dare to move. She only pricked up her ears to listen for movement. Unfortunately, nothing happened. After drinking the last cup of tea, that person stood up and opened the door of the room. The waiter quickly came over. "Customer, do you want to order?" "No need. Looks like my friend won't be coming."
"Hey, raise the money for the tea."
That person threw a small piece of silver to the waiter and left in a hurry. The waiter scratched his head and could only come in to clean up the table. Unexpectedly, just as he picked up the teapot, a figure suddenly rolled out from under the table. The waiter was shocked and almost screamed. Gu Yundong quickly jumped up and covered his mouth. Miss Gu?" The waiter was shocked. "Why are you here? When did you hide under the table?" Chapter 1176. A woman who had an affair? Gu Yundong was anxious about the person who left, so he glared at the waiter and said, "You didn't see anything just now, did you hear that?
If you dare to say that you saw me, I'll get Lu Wei to fire you and let you go home to eat your own food."
Then, she left in a hurry. The waiter looked like he wanted to cry but had no tears. He would not tell anyone. His mouth was very tight. Previously, he had discovered that Miss Gu was eavesdropping on others, so he had told the shopkeeper. Such a sincere, kind and honest person was actually threatened by Miss Gu. He felt wronged. Gu Yundong had already rushed downstairs and left the restaurant. She did not even see the shopkeeper greet her.
As expected, that person had not gone far.
Gu Yundong heaved a sigh of relief.
That person's footsteps were steady, and he did not seem to be in a hurry to do anything after receiving the note.
He was very calm. When the other party turned the corner, Gu Yundong finally saw his face clearly. She couldn't help but narrow her eyes. It was him? The middle-aged man who had followed Tao Xing back then. A member of the Tao family? Gu Yundong pursed her lips tightly. The Tao family? The Zhang family? Tao Xing, Master Tao, Zhang Hao, Zhang Jiao. She suddenly recalled what Lu Wei had said to her. According to old Master Liu's investigation, Zhang Jiao wanted to marry Tao Yan back then, but it failed. Gu Yundong could not figure it out and could only follow behind the middle-aged man. However, when they passed by the tea house, she suddenly heard a voice coming from upstairs. She looked up and saw Tong Shui Tao, who was drinking tea with Gu Dafeng and Chong Yaya on the second floor, greeting her. Gu Yundong immediately pressed her hand down. Tong Shui Tao immediately understood and quickly turned around to go downstairs. Gu Yundong did not stop. She was still following behind the middle-aged man. Tong Shui Tao ran a few steps before catching up to her.
"Miss, what are you doing?"
"I'm going to investigate something. Send my eldest aunt and little aunt back later. I'll go home myself. Don't worry about me." "Investigate something?" Tong Shui Tao was eager to try, her eyes sparkling.
"Miss, do you need my help?"
"You're helping me by sending eldest aunt and little aunt back." Gu Yundong waved her hand. "All right, let's go."
"Oh."
Although Tong Shui Tao was a little disappointed, she still obediently turned around and returned to the tea house.
However, before she left, she still glanced at the middle-aged man who was being followed by her Mississippi.
At that moment, the middle-aged man entered a shop. Gu Yundong looked up at the shop sign. It was a grocery store. The middle-aged man only bought a paper bag and a pot of wine before coming out. He did not waste any time and quickly walked forward. Gu Yundong followed him for a short distance before entering an alley. She watched as the middle-aged man knocked on one of the courtyards. The courtyard door opened and a woman came out. When the woman saw the middle-aged man, she was stunned for a moment. Gu Yundong didn't know what the middle-aged man had said, but the woman's expression changed slightly. She immediately pulled him in with a smile, as if she was a woman waiting for her husband to return home. It was as if she was a woman who had an affair with someone. But Gu Yundong could clearly see that the moment the woman opened the door, the expression on her face was a little unfamiliar. Perhaps she didn't know the middle-aged man. It was only after the middle-aged man said something that she instantly changed her attitude. Gu Yundong looked up at the courtyard wall. It was a pity that she probably could not climb over it.